Hello, welcome back to the Live Reality Game Podcast. My name is Steven. I'm here with more Surviving Reelfoot unfinished business content. The season's been over 2 months, but there's still entries that must be done. And today with me, I have Brent. Brent, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Steven. How are you?
I'm doing well. We were supposed to meet yesterday, but we had rain in San Antonio, which when does that happen? And so caused some internet issues, but thankfully you're free and I'm free, and here we are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how has your summer been post Reelfoot? It's been about 2 months since the game happened now.
Yeah, it's been good. I can't believe it's been 2 months. I feel like we're almost in fall here. It's been good. I've had some chance to process and still continue to talk to my fellow castaways, and I think it was a great start to the summer. And yeah, looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, so you played back in 2019, Caliban's Revenge, and what I was kind of mentioned before, it was a very different experience. First of all, did you miss the rain this season? Were you just like, why is it not pouring on me nonstop? Was that something going through your mind?
It's It's funny because I was just so used to Reelfoot being meaning rain. And so in my first season, I think I was in the rain. I think I was in the game 4.5 days. I think it rained for like 4 of those days. And by the time I got voted out, that's when the rain stopped. And so I had no experience that wasn't soaking wet. And then it rained. You probably know better than I do from doing these interviews, but like the first day, maybe, or like right after we got our shelter built. And I was kind of just prepared to be like, okay, it's going to rain again. Like this is just going to happen. And I was fine with it. And then it stopped. And I don't think it rained. Maybe at losers camp, it rained a little bit because that's the only time I remember rain. But yeah, I was ready for it. I was prepared, but I was very thankful that we didn't have as much rain.
Did you like bring a lot of clothing that was like weather rain appropriate, predicting it was going to rain on you nonstop, and you were going to be prepared this
I
time?
I honestly, so no, the only thing I did bring, so backtrack. I did bring a jacket, but seeing other people's jackets, I was like, I should have brought a heavier jacket. I like follow the rules too much sometimes, and I was like, okay, light jacket, and I brought this like super thin like spring jacket. People had like raincoats basically, but I did kind of, well, I didn't break the rules because it was approved, but I did go out on a limb and I got this like parka thing that you could bring a parka, but it was supposed to be, or I thought it was supposed to be one of those like super flimsy ones that you get from like, I don't know, Walmart for like,
Mhm.
five for $1 or something. And I got this one from Amazon that was like, it could basically be used as a tarp. I think it had holes. It has holes in the corners that you can use to like tarp up and hang up if you need to. And so I brought that thinking that was going to be super helpful for the rain. And we didn't ever have to use it, but I was like, if we need an extra tarp, I will sacrifice this and have it be part of our shelter, and then gain some goodwill because I'm using that. So
Well, thank goodness the season was much drier, I think, for everyone's
yeah,
experience.
we had a much better experience. I think we had that rain on the first day, and all of us were like, "Oh my gosh, is this going to go away?" And then we had one night where I think the handlers did tell us that there was like a thunderstorm warning,
Mhm.
but it never actually rained from that. So we were very grateful. Yeah,
So, what led you to first discover Reelfoot and apply for it back in 2019?
yeah. I was thinking about this and actually talking to Parker after I was out of this season. He actually just reached out to me. I think he was just doing a blast to like a bunch of people to apply for Reelfoot. I just got a message from him one day, and he said, "Hey, you should apply for this game." And I knew that orgs existed. I knew that LRGs existed, I think, but I never really thought to play one. I just
Hmm.
never it never crossed my mind. I had never actually been to a site to like look at an application. It wasn't part of my world. And I thought, I think it was around Christmas because I remember I was at my parents' house visiting for a holiday. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to apply. Like, I'm just going to do it. And yeah, so that was it. And I like looked up some of the seasons. I watched part of it, but didn't. I don't think I really watched a full season. I just watched parts of Reelfoot, and I was like, this looks pretty cool. And I didn't know really anybody that was going to be applying, or like, there's obviously with this season being returning, everyone knew everybody, but I
Hmm.
came in knowing nobody, and just like really just meeting these people on the internet, and like Parker and Amos and Pete, and being like, okay, I'm going to go do this. So that was kind of a cool part about it, is I was applying to this thing that like I knew they existed, but I didn't know anybody that had really played one. So I just kind of went for it. And I was like, I felt like special that Parker reached out to me, and then realized like he probably reached out to 60 other people, and I was just one of the people that wanted to apply. But I got chosen and played and had fun. So
So how did you know Parker beforehand?
I didn't. He just reached out to me. I don't know if I was pretty involved in like the RHAP community. I don't know if he like knew me from like a Facebook group. I don't even know if he's involved, but I don't know. Maybe just looked for people that he had mutual friends with. But it was just like a random reach out.
So you arrive in 2019 for Calipan's Revenge, and it is a very brutal season. Yet you go to a lot of tribal councils. I think, gosh, I can't remember the name of your tribe, but your tribe has this like very
Chula.
Chula has this very momentous losing streak that just whittles the tribe down, and you are unfortunately
Yeah.
caught up in that. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was. So it was my first experience playing, so I didn't really know anything different. So it's just
Hmm.
kind of trying to roll with it. I think in a lot of ways, it helped me bond to the people that I was bonded with because right away we had to go to tribal, which is very different than this season because I didn't have to go to tribal until, that tribal that I was vulnerable and had to play my idol. So I really had to get to know people quickly. I didn't really know when I first started whether I was going to play hard at first or try to
Hmm.
make alliances or whatever, but that was kind of thrown out the window because you had to. And so people like Anessa that I was very close with on that season, and Adam and Alex and William and Tony, all the people that were on my starting tribe, like we just kind of had to bond,
Hmm.
and figure out who we were going to vote out. We had a returner that season. The twist was everybody had a returner on their tribe. And so that was an interesting wrinkle. So
Hmm.
it was hard because we wanted to win, and I really liked all the people that we were with. Clark was also on my tribe. He was in this cast as well. So we had to get a core inside of that group. I think we started with 8 or 9.
8 sounds right.
um
24
8,
players.
yeah. And so yeah, that's right, it was 24. And so we kind of had a tight 5 to 6, and just it kind of started like that. So, and I know Tony talked about this too, but the first time that we actually won, I think we won one reward and one immunity, but the one time we won immunity was when we went back that night and we were eating something that we had got or maybe it wasn't reward. It was raining so hard that they gave us rice cakes because it was like we couldn't make any rice. So anyways, we were
Hmm.
eating food. It was great. We were all happy. We were going to go to bed. And then they come to us and say, okay, it's time to swap and your camp is going away. So you have to get all your stuff and come with us. So basically up until the point where Chula was disbanded,
Hmm.
we were losing and losing and losing. And then we had a glimmer of hope, and we got switched on different tribes, which was great for some people, not so great for me in terms of my swap.
As you moved
But
to Kali tribe, and that tribe then
yeah,
did a lot of tribal councils as well.
yeah, that tribe, we did not stop the losing streak. That was a pretty good mix. It was, I mean, Tony and I were the only Chulas that went, but it was a
Hmm.
good mix of the other two tribes and the green and the pink tribes. They were
Hmm.
Chakali being the pink, I think, or no, sorry, the
Right.
green. Anyways,
Nooney's
we
pink to Kali's
Noonie,
green.
that's right, Noonie Shark, do, yeah. So it was a good mix. I mean, Tony and I were obviously in the minority, and we lost, but we lost the first couple, and they didn't vote out Tony or I. So it was like, okay, great, like maybe we're gonna get in. And then the 3 and 3 on the Takali and the Noonie side just kind of got together and disbanded Tony and I and took us out, Tony first and then me. And I don't know. I thought a lot about that leading up into this next like second season. Even before I knew I was going to play again, I thought about it a lot of like, what should I have done? And I think Tony probably talked about this, and we even talked about it together. Like we probably should have been more okay with thanks, Jeff.
Jeff also is
No,
a veteran of that ill-fated Takali tribe. Worst mistake
yeah.
ever.
I mean, we might have won some more if Tony or I stuck around, but yeah, it was a bummer. But Jeff and I had a lot of fun in free jury. So, but yeah, it was something where Tony and I probably should have been more okay with turning on each other because I think they saw right through us the fact that we were kind of sticking together, which we didn't have numbers. I mean, I thought I had some from the other groups, but anyways, yeah, the losing streak continued. I mean, I kept my hopes up despite us continuing to lose, but we ended up getting whittled away. And,
Hmm.
I think in that game, 3 of my original really strong, tight allies, which were Anessa, Alex, and William, all made the final 4 and
Hmm.
all were strong competitors. So I was like, if I could have just made it through, who knows what could have happened. But um, that, that game ended a little early for me. And it was a good experience, though. I had a lot of fun.
Did you have any takeaways, or what? Or I guess what's your takeaway now from that experience?
Yeah, I think in terms of my first season, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and just so
Hmm.
kind of preparing to know what you're going to be going through and not being blindsided by the elements of what you're doing out there, and just kind of knowing where you're at in the game and how the game can shift, like that example of being on Chula and then having it be like, hey, you're going to go to new tribes, like we're anticipating a swap, like we're all seasoned players that have played, we're all going to anticipate a swap, even if we're anticipating it too early, we know it's going to come at some point. And so I think the takeaway from that was just be prepared for anything. And then also with feeling like I probably should have been okay with at a swap turning on Tony at that. I wouldn't have
Hmm.
wanted to, obviously, but having to do that to keep my game, like
Hmm.
I think I probably didn't do the greatest of that in this season either. Well, we'll talk about it, but I don't think I made really a mistake in that case. But you always look back and you're like, who should I have talked to? Who should I have been involved
Hmm.
with? And should I have thrown that person under the bus just to make sure that I got to the next round? But you always say woulda, coulda, shoulda. You never know if you really would have actually made it. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think it was just going through a game, knowing how quick it can change, knowing how, you have to look out for yourself. And also really wanted to find an idol, which I was able to do because I searched and searched and searched on that Takali tribe to try to find an idol. And eventually I did. This season, I didn't last season, but um, I wish I would have. And yeah, that was one of my takeaways too, is like, you gotta do what you gotta do to save yourself.
You're a big Survivor fan. Did playing that season of Reelfoot change your understanding of the game or how you watch the show?
Yeah, it did. I mean, I think just listening to podcasts and getting as into it as I do kind of had changed my way of looking at it as well. But
Hmm.
part of it that you don't see a lot of, especially in the 26-day game, is like the downtime that you have, and
Hmm.
and the conversations that you have, and how little things can shift, and also just how much it does mirror kind of like life in general too. Like if you go out there and in life you have your friends and the people that you associate with, like in real foot you're going to go to those people and have friends and be like close to them. But the trick is like needing to open yourself up to everybody, needing to like, whether it's an
Hmm.
actual thing that you're doing or you're just pushing it and trying to, fake it, is make a relationship with everybody. And you just don't do that in your real life. You have other stuff going on.
Hmm.
You associate with your people, but the people that can really make a relationship with everybody, and when it comes down to it, needing those relationships to come through for you, I think that like that's something you don't think about. Is, you're like, well, how can that person not have talked to everybody, and how can that person not have like done what they need to do? And it's like, well, you get swapped with people, and you're really close to the people that were on your tribe, especially if you think you have the numbers, and like maybe you don't think you have to make a deal with everyone or talk to everyone, and
Hmm.
and you may even think you're doing it. You may even think they're like, oh yeah, I talked to this person, so I'm good with that person. But like they have their own things that they need to go out and do for themselves too. So you have to think about it from other people's perspective. You have to think about it from what's the best move for them. And even though you're the hero of your own story, they're not always looking out for you. So it's definitely a reality check of like, okay, this is, a game, and I want to do right by the people that I'm close to. But at the end of the day, it's a game, and I got to do what I got to do. So it does put you in that mindset of what would I do, in this situation. And I was just about to say, like, if I played the real Survivor, but Real Foot is the real deal. I think a lot of these games are the real deal, especially with the length of Real Foot. So it definitely gives you a different perspective.
So you played in 2019. Did you have any other LRG experience before coming into this game in 2023?
No, I always thought like, I don't know if I'm going to play another game. If I did, I'd want to play Real Foot again, which I didn't know that that would even be a possibility. I think just because I played Real Foot and the length of the game, I was like, I don't know that I'd want to play like a weekend game
Hmm.
or, whatever. I think looking back on that, I think I would want to play a different game and try out a different experience,
Hmm.
just to see what it's like. But I think afterwards, yeah, I don't know. Like I just thought that I had played that game, and maybe I was thinking that I would get the chance to play again or hoping that I would, but I never pursued other games. And I think playing a second time gives me that itch to want to maybe try another game or see what other games are like. But I had not played any other LRGs. I've never played an org. I was just very much like played Real Foot, and that was fun. And we'll see if it happens again. But I didn't go for any other ones.
Well, you get the invite from production to come back for a returning season. What did you do to prepare for this new game?
Yeah, so I got the message. I was actually taking a break from social media when Parker sent me a message, and so I didn't see it. And 2 weeks later, he's like, "Hey, can you check your Facebook messages?" So I freaked out at first. I was super excited, and then this was such a different season because immediately, like, I even got an invite probably later than a lot of people, because I know that the cast they were like, "Okay, we reached out to the people that we reached out to," and I wasn't part of that. So I know I was a backup, a cast. So when I found out, I was like, oh my God, am I already behind? People have known since, I think, in like early beginning of the year, like January, something, they said that they had reached out to the cast. So, and I found out maybe in March. So I'm like, are people already talking? And there's a conflict in me because I'm not above pre-gaming, but I also didn't want, if I could make the game, like if I could control what's happening pre-game, I would not want relationships to be built or conversation to be had. I would just want to go into the game and play. And I know that's not possible because everyone talks to everybody and people have pre-existing relationships. So at that point, it's kind of like you're really doing yourself a disservice by not pre-gaming or talking to people. And so I felt like I needed to do that, but that's why I loved going on Reelfoot the first time, because I knew nobody. Like it was just like, that is a difference between like the real show, the CBS show, and like LRGs, is that there are pre-existing relationships. The community is a lot smaller. There's such a small chance that you'll know somebody from real life going on the CBS show, but there's a pretty good chance that if you're in an LRG, you're going to know at least somebody going in. So yeah, so to prepare, I mean, I didn't do a ton of pre-gaming up until like they actually announced the cast. I did reach out to a couple people. Like I talked to Anessa, even though she wasn't going to be playing at that point, but I had talked to her because we were friends from before. And then I kind of caught wind that a couple other people were playing. So I never reached out and was like, hey, we need to work together. But I was like, hey, I might be seeing you this summer. Like, can't wait. It was basically kind of like, hey, we're going to play. Looking forward to playing. And then once they announced the cast, it was like, okay, they're basically opening the floodgates. And really at that point, if you're not talking to people, like, you're making a mistake. Still, I didn't really do like a hardcore, like we're going to be final two or like alliance or whatever. But I did talk to a few people. Like, I talked to Tony, talked to Clark. They were both on my season. I talked to Nate a little bit. And I talked to several people, but really just keyed in on some relationships that I already had, and tried to make sure that they knew that, hey, I'd be playing, just in case you were talking to other people. And there was this thought that I had that I don't know if other people really had, but there were going to be a lot of people from who I saw that were from later seasons, like season 9, even though I was on season 8, like season 9 and 10 were pretty heavily dispersed. The earlier seasons, were not very heavily dispersed. There were probably as many from outside of 9 and 10 as there were from 9 and 10, or even maybe more from those seasons than there were the opposite. So I was already feeling like, I'm going to be on the outside looking in from those people, but I also didn't want to reach out to people that I knew nothing about and just be like, hey, like randomly reaching out to you. So I had a few conversations. I didn't push it. I tried to rely on the fact that like tribes are going to be split up. We'll have to, make relationships. Just because they were on a season together, like, doesn't automatically mean they're going to be tight to the end. And I think what you saw in the season is a lot of people that had relationships, not even from their season, but from, pre-existing games or outside of Reelfoot. So those things, it's really hard to know of unless you know of them. So anyways, did a lot of talking to people. Outside of that, just like packed my stuff. I tried not to overanalyze it because I can tend to do that. So I just, got ready and did what I thought I needed to do to prepare in terms of the social game. And that was basically it.
Had you followed the previous 2 seasons closely?
I did. I wouldn't say that I watched everything, but I followed along with who was getting voted out, who were the big players. Like before the cast got announced, I kind of knew a couple of people like that I thought would be on there. Like, Todd and Megan, I knew of in terms of their seasons and how far that they had gotten, and just being players that made an impact. Others as well, but just kind of like when you're not in the season, I know you can like watch the whole time and get really into it. And I tried to watch as much as I could, but I think mostly when it got down to like merge time and it was easier to follow and keep track of who is who. But I did go back and watch some parts of it, or at least like look at who was on each season and which season they were from. So Yeah, I followed it a little bit. I didn't even go back and watch much of my season, so after it was done. So I followed as much as I could and just kind of got up to speed on who might be out there.
Did anyone stand out to you on the cast list? People that you were excited to see or worried about seeing there?
Despite there being a lot of season 9 and 10, I felt like there were a lot for my season, which I was happy about. At least knowing names and faces, like that's going to be good. So, I mean, I was super excited to see Tony. It's no secret that we were like, friends on our season, and also like put together in a situation where we needed to be loyal to each other. So I was happy to see him, and at the same time, like, that can be a detriment to you if people know that you're a super day pair. We didn't make it very far, so I don't know if people would be like, oh, Brent and Tony are best friends. But I think there was a little bit of that, but we kind of talked previous to the game, and we were like, if we're on the same tribe, great. Like, we don't want to make it obvious that we're tight or, put a target on our backs, but like, if we're not, hopefully we make it to the merge and see each other. And so that was kind of how I thought about that. Yeah. And then seeing Todd on the cast was cool. I know he was like the Todd father, which I mentioned to him during the game at one point, and he was like, yeah, like don't play that up a lot, which I respect. So I wasn't trying to like paint a target on him, but that was pretty cool. Seeing Reynolds on the cast was cool. I'd known him just from being around and Reelfoot in general. He's someone that a lot of people know, and I was excited to see him on there. Definitely seeing Amber for my season. I was, Amber had a hand in voting me out, and I was like, okay, hope that we can work together this time. That was an interesting scenario that played out on the season. But yeah, I would say largely it was like people that I knew, and then people that I had no idea who they were. So a lot of them were wild cards to me. I mean, I knew who they were in terms of I knew their names and faces, but like didn't know a ton about how they played. So I was excited to see the people that I knew, and excited that there were a good number of people that I'd get to meet.
Yeah, look at the cast. So it's the only person who you never play with that returned Nate, because it looked like you were on the starting tribe as Clark, same starting tribe as Tony. You were in the swap
in terms of my original season.
Yeah, Amber. Oh, I guess like Adam Stair as well, right? So Adam
I didn't know. Yeah, so Adam was one I was really excited to see because we didn't get to play at all. He was voted out pre-swap, and then I was voted out after that, so didn't get the chance to play with him. And he actually had gone home before like I got voted out from our season, so I didn't even really get a chance to know him. But we were friends on Facebook, and I followed along with his business and just like thought he was a cool guy. So I was excited to see him on the cast, and was super happy that he was on my starting tribe. So yeah, I had not played with Nate, although I had, kept up with Nate, or at least like followed each other or whatever along and talked before the game. But Adam was another one that just reached out and was like, hey, looking forward to playing with you. And like, it was cool that I knew who he was, but I at the same time, like didn't know him in a lot of degrees. So I tried to, I hoped I would be able to make a relationship with him, and we ended up doing that. So that was great.
Coming into the game, do you have an opening strategy or things you want to do, or you're just going to figure out as you go?
It wasn't just figured out as I go. Like I did want to come in and make myself valuable to my tribe, make relationships with everybody on my tribe, hopefully win some challenges. And I know that, I'm not the puzzle master by any means, but I'm pretty good in like physical or endurance or, challenges like that. So just do what I can around camp, get in, good with people, make sure that people had a good feeling about me, bond with people. I felt like I did have a really good bond with my original tribe last season, despite the fact that we had to go to several tribal councils. Like I was able to actually make a relationship with everybody. And so I just wanted to do that and hoped for a little better luck this time, which I did get at the beginning. So a lot of it's like, you do what you can, and then you have a lot of luck that goes into it too. So I was just hopeful that we would have a good group and win some challenges. And I didn't think that we'd avoid tribal council for as long as we did, but I hoped at least we didn't have to pick each other off right away. So I didn't want to think too far into the game, because anything can happen with swaps and things that come up and twists and whatnot. But I was just hoping to get into the game and play. Like I feel like to a certain extent, I had a good time playing in my original tribe. And then when we got to the swap tribe, it was like, I couldn't get social footing. We kept losing. I knew the writing was on the wall, and I didn't really have a chance to like get out of anything. So I was really coming into the season hoping to be able to actually play and enjoy my time. And, I definitely did that.
So the game starts and you learn the season is called unfinished business. If you could encapsulate what is your unfinished business with Reelfoot?
Well, I probably would have said making the merge, which is still my unfinished business, I guess. Yeah, I mean, in terms of a game sense, I felt like I did a lot last time I got to play. I survived tribal councils. I got to vote people out, got to pull off a blindside, lost a lot of challenges, had to go to tribals, which even though they're not fun, it's like a cool part of the game and having to strategize and scramble. But I was hoping to get to a point in the game where I could, play an individual game, play some individual challenges, and just make that point where you do the merge feast and then you start the individual portion, and hopefully I made enough relationships to get myself through a few rounds. So I wouldn't say that my unfinished business is winning or making the finals, because that's super rare and takes a lot of skill and luck and all that stuff that goes into it. But yeah, I think it'd be getting to a point in the game that I hadn't gotten before, which would have been the merge game. And from there, it's kind of all bets are off. It's an individual game and you see what you can do. So I actually don't know how different the merge game is compared to pre-merge. I'm sure it's quite different, but that to me is just I want to get there and play and see what I can do. So that would definitely be my unfinished business.
You also learned the shot in the dark is in play. As a Survivor fan, I'm sure you have thoughts on the shot in the dark as a mechanic.
Yeah, the shot in the dark to me it's funny because it's such a big twist, but I think it's a twist because the threat of it is there. So you always have to strategize around it. You're not for me, part of my game was really determined by the fact that 2 shot in the darks actually were successful in the pre-jury, pre-merge. Josh went out on a shot in the dark, or could have gone out, but he played a shot in the dark and was saved by that. And he was part of my undoing of people that ultimately weren't really on my side at the end of the day at the merge. And so
Josh would like you to know that he didn't want you to get voted out that first swap tribal. He blames Taylor. It was all
I
her.
know, Josh. I know that there were, you were in a difficult position and definitely had to scrap your way up from a position that you were in. So no hard feelings on that. But the fact that he was saved by a shot in the dark, totally changes the game, butterfly effect. That could have been Nate, because Nate's the one that went out at that tribal. So if that was Nate, I think I probably have better social footing with him just from knowing him from previous seasons. So it's wild because it's something that is so rare to actually hit, but it hit twice in the pre-merge of our season. And it's also not even the fact that it's going to be played. It's just what if it's played? And then for me, when I'm at my tribal, that I ultimately got voted out at the loser camp, I wasn't even thinking about shot in the dark. And even if I was, I probably still wouldn't have played it because, I have to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'm going home to want to play shot in the dark, because I'm taking away my vote. And if I'm going to go in there and throw my vote away, I have to know that there's no chance. And we'll talk about loser camp when we get to that portion, but it was very much set up to be so many different avenues. And I've thought about the situations, none of those were going my way, but there's that hope that, this person might be going for me, or this relationship might come through. So for me, it's definitely an interesting twist. It's not one, I know this is one of your questions. It's not one that I love, maybe just because I haven't had a great experience with it, but it definitely is a wrinkle that I think is a good mechanic that makes the game more interesting.
When talking about how the shots in dark have had these ramifications for your game, Frank going out and Skylar staying has a large effect on your tribe, which then impacts you having to play your idol at that tribal council, not having it then for that merge vote or that pre-merge loser camp vote too.
Yeah.
So you end up on the Galelo tribe, the yellow tribe. Talk to me about your thoughts of this tribe as you're seeing everyone together.
Yeah, so we got on the mat and they did the thing where it was they named off the tribe. So it was one by one. We were all walking to our mats. I was really happy with our tribe. I thought that we had a great combo of people that I knew and people that I thought I could work with. I also chatted with Skylar pregame and just kind of knew her through Jeff. And so I was really glad to see her on my tribe. Also, so I'm looking at the list here, Corey and Adam, as well as Clark, even though he wasn't on my tribe. The four of us were in a car coming from the airport to Reelfoot. Pete drove us over. So those, I mean, anything is game, right? So like talking to those people, you know, I didn't know Corey at all, but knowing him from that drive, and then having Adam, who I didn't really know from my season, but getting to know him and having that bond of being on the same season, like those are great people to have with you. Skylar, like I said, didn't really know Carly that well, but was happy she was there. Todd, you know, big physical player, was happy that he was there. And then I knew that Megan made it far in the game in her season. So I really thought that we had a great tribe. I thought the dynamics when we first got to camp, you know, started off good, and we were able to form a bond. So I was really happy with the people that I was with, and also was happy that there were people that weren't on my tribe. Not that they weren't on my tribe, but like, you know, Tony and I talked about, like I said, if we were on the same tribe, we might get targeted. So I was like, okay, this is good. Maybe Tony can make it through and I can make it through. And if we get swapped together, you know, we'll be able to have each other's backs. Or if we get to merge together, we'll be able to have each other's backs. So I think they made a good mix, and I was really happy with our Galelo tribe.
So you had that opening reward challenge. How was that challenge for you?
That was interesting. That was the one where we got disqualified, right? That's one you're talking about. So yeah, first challenge of the game. It's the first night. It's getting dark. We're doing this challenge. You have to run behind the hay bale and grab a bag. I was going to be a runner, but I think I was going to go last. And so I didn't actually get a chance to run. And, you know, I honestly didn't really care all that much that we got disqualified. I don't even remember what the reward was, but was it food? Do you know offhand? I don't know what it was. It doesn't matter. It wasn't something I was even really caring about winning. It would be fun, like for a momentum boost, or like a, hey, we won the first challenge, but I was not upset. I know that Todd was super upset, and he felt really bad, which I get, and I would have felt bad in the same position, but it didn't matter. Like it just really didn't matter, especially because we were going into night one. We were all still in the game. Like it wasn't for immunity. We could rally around even though it was a loss. Like we didn't technically lose. We kept saying that, you know, we didn't technically lose. So when we kept winning challenges after that, we're like, we're still undefeated because we haven't lost a challenge. And actually, like going back to camp after that, I can't remember. I think it was that night. It was getting dark. We were around the fire, and Todd was like, hey guys, I'm sorry. Like, you know, I lost that challenge for us. I won't do that again, blah, blah, blah. And we were all like, no, don't worry about it. It's fine. Like, and truly we all meant it. Like, I don't think any of us really cared or were that mad that we lost. And he was like, no, I let you guys down, whatever. And I looked at him and I was like, hey, like the only reason I'll ever be mad at you about this is if you let it impact our challenges tomorrow. Like basically like buck up and stop saying that, because it's only going to be, you know, negative. And I thought about that before I said it. And I was like, Todd's a, you know, straight shooter, you know, good guy, military guy. Like he'll respect this, like Frank language, not Frank Goodpaster, just Brent language. Saying that to him was just like, and I didn't know if he would care. I didn't know if he'd take it, but I was like, he's not going to be offended by it. Like he's a straight shooter. He's a good guy. I don't think so. And then the next morning he actually pulled me aside and he was like, hey, just want you to say like, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. And I was like, yeah, like I didn't want you to beat yourself up. I didn't want it to leak into the next challenge. And I thought that was a way that I could like use some sort of social connection to be like, hey dude, don't worry about it. And I will really be mad at you if you keep talking about this. So that, I mean, it was making the best of a bad situation. And I don't think we were really worse for the wear of that challenge.
Yeah. So that first afternoon, evening, was there anyone in particular you found yourself bonding with, or was there any strategy talk happening at all that day?
I don't really think there was strategy talk. I mean, I think Skylar and I kind of had a silent like, hey, we're really glad we're on the same tribe, because we had, you know, become friends before the season and hoped that we could play together. I think it was a lot of just talking amongst ourselves. We didn't have a tribal to worry about. It was the first night. We were just getting set up. Nobody really wants to be that person. So I think Skylar and I probably like looked at each other or had a conversation when it was just the two of us, or maybe not a conversation, but just been like, I'm really excited you're on my tribe. Like, I really feel good about you, blah, blah, blah. But that was really it. There wasn't a ton of strategy talk that night.
I guess was there anyone that you were most excited to get to know, or anyone else, any surprises that evening for you?
Adam was just hilarious. I mean, that's just what I remember from him from the start, is just enjoying being around him. I got to know him a lot. If you're with Adam, on or not on a Survivor type platform, but especially if you're on a Survivor type platform, all you have to do is talk, and that boy can talk. So just talking about, himself and his life. And I was super excited to get to know him because, like I said, I know he had like started his business basically right when Reelfoot was starting, and his casting agency, and just like all the stuff that he posted. I was super excited to get to know him, and I was hoping we could work together. Yeah, I mean, Corey from season one, like super cool to have somebody from season one and somebody that's played a lot of games. So we talked a lot about the games he's played, and I just tried to take little things I knew about people and get to know them with those pieces in mind. But yeah, I felt really good about everybody, and at that point, I wasn't really honing in on anybody except Skylar, who I had talked to before.
You mentioned that one of the things you not actually on like your bucket list of things that you really want to do is find an idol. How actively were you looking this first day, or was most your hunting the second day?
I was looking just passively. Like as I looked for firewood, I looked down, I probably went a little bit further into the woods than I normally would just to try to see if there's anything. Of course, you look at little tree stumps just to see if there's anything. I don't even think it was hidden at that point, but I was more passively looking. I would say most of my hunting happened the next day and subsequent days, but I was definitely looking. I feel like I've heard a couple people's, deep dives at this point. I feel like a lot of people say, you're looking, you're not oblivious to the fact that there could be something out there. But even if I did see something at that point, would I have actually grabbed it if I was around everybody on day one? I mean, it definitely would have been a question, but I wasn't actively trying to put a target on my back. So I wasn't really looking other than just like glances here and there as you walk down the trail.
How was that first night back sleeping on the ground in Reelfoot?
The sleep was definitely the hardest part, just overall. And it wasn't even with the rain. Last season I played, obviously we talked about tons of rain. That's hard because you're just miserable and you're wet and you're cold and you're just, wake up every 20 minutes. This time it was more just like laying on the ground, rolling over on your back to your stomach, on your side. Like you just couldn't find a comfortable position. It wasn't fun. It really sucked, but we actually won comfort earlier on in the game, than most tribes. So that was pretty nice. But yeah, it wasn't great. I would say, like, despite the fact that you sleep 2 to 3 hours a night, you somehow wake up and have energy to play the game because you're really excited and have fun. But getting through the night and like getting to that point of the next day, the nights just seem so long. So yeah, sleep wasn't fun.
So the next day you have your second reward challenge, and this is going to be, I think, a very important challenge in your story of your game. It's the endurance challenge where you're holding up a box with your feet with another player. You and Megan are paired up for this in your tribe. Talk to me about this challenge for you.
Yeah, with this challenge, I had talked to Megan, but we hadn't really had any strategy conversations. But I knew when we found out what the challenge was that I wanted Megan to be my partner for it, because I knew that at least I thought that she would be the best endurance player, or we would have the best chance of winning together. Mostly because I think we're very similar, like in our build and I think in our strengths. And I knew she played sports and, she is active, and not that anybody on our tribe wasn't, but just saying, like, I feel like we were very well matched. And I thought that not only physically, but mentally, I thought that Megan would be a very strong-willed player to like want to win that challenge. I didn't know if I wanted to win that challenge, but I knew that we could if we wanted to. And if we, I don't know, it harkens back to my first season because Tony and I had an endurance challenge where we had to hold the disc between our hands, and we just looked at each other in that challenge and like we just knew we were going to win. And it was just something where like we had to outlast, because at that point we were losing and losing and losing. Different situation, it's only the second challenge, but I was like, I think Megan and I can do this. And the other reason I chose Megan or asked Megan if she wanted to be my partner is because I wanted to have an experience with her where we did well, that we could bond over. And I wanted her to know that like I would go to bat for her. I thought she'd be a good person to have, as an alliance member. So I knew I want to play, even if we don't win, I want to have a good showing. In that challenge, you think that you're just sitting there, but you're communicating a lot, right? Like at a certain point, we wanted to give our legs a break. So she would move her one foot to the middle of the box and stretch her leg, and then we do the other one, and we would take turns doing that. And like, you have to have good communication. You have to have good camaraderie together, and we didn't really have that yet. So I was like, well, let's build some camaraderie, and if we can win something in the process, let's do it. So it was a fun challenge. I think my thighs were sunburnt for a good 3 weeks after that. I mean, you try to put sunscreen on, but you don't think you're going to be in the sun for the direct sunlight for 2+
Especially
hours.
not your legs like that.
Yeah, exactly,
Like
exactly.
neck,
And I didn't go
face, arms, but
oh, and I had my hat over my face for part of it. Like my buff was all over, so like nothing else got sunburned, but my shorts like fell because our legs were in an upper position, and so that's that upper thigh area that you just don't sunscreen that part very much. So yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was hard, and it was definitely a challenge that we didn't really need to win. Like at a certain point, it crossed my mind several times of like, are we painting targets on our back? Are we like, it's reward? Do we really need it? But at the end of the day, it was a really good thing for us. Megan and I made a bond, and we got comfort. It ultimately led to a clue that Megan got. Actually, no, sorry, different comfort that we won. That was after the other challenge. But regardless, we won something. We got to feel good as a tribe, especially coming off of that loss to the last night. Sorry, not a loss, a disqualification. We needed a boost. So, and at a certain point, it's like, if you're going to go an hour and a half and there's other people still there, you just like try to go and win it. Frank and I think it was Reynolds had already eaten something and had a beer and all that stuff, and I was like, man, I wish I would have got out for some of that food. But after that point, you're like, you just got to go for it.
You're correct. I completely swapped the two reward challenges today. This is the second reward challenge of the day. The memory match challenge is the first reward challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. That makes sense, because we did get the chair that Megan got a clue in, which I had already gotten a clue. So yeah.
I feel it feels like that because you and Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, you win it for your tribe, right? In that endurance challenge. And so I feel like that puts you on. I think you kind of go on people's radars like, oh, Brent is a physical player. At that point.
Yeah, and that was another thing. Like, you do put a target on yourself, and that's maybe something I overlooked, was putting a target on myself to other people. Not on my tribe, because I feel like your tribe's going to be like, yeah, great, you won something for us, like we're still camaraderie. But then other people look at you as like, oh, they won that endurance challenge. I don't know what people thought of me after that. I don't really know if people actually thought I was more physical or whatever after that. I feel like I was doing a lot of the running portions and challenges. So like at a certain point, it's hard to hide some of those things if you're going to put yourself in those positions. But yeah, it's something that you weigh, because it's like, you could just drop, like, make it your good 20-30 minutes, maybe even get some food out of it, but just drop. But I guess I just couldn't do that. I had that instinct. I wanted to win, because you know what, if nothing else, if I got voted out that night or the next day or whatever as the first person voted out, heaven forbid, like at least I won that challenge and could have that moment. So you got to play for the long game.
Impressive.
But yeah, I mean, we went over 2 hours. I think it was like, at a certain point, you're like, I've done this for a long time, let's just keep going. And so it was interesting too, because you could see certain people. Like, I could see people in front of me, obviously couldn't really turn my head. Megan could see the people behind me. So there are 3 teams. I think the red tribe had 3 teams going still, and the blue tribe just had 1. And so I don't know what they're doing behind me. And that, it's just like, you never know, if people could just drop any instant and you could win. So at a certain point, when you're down to the end, you just go for it. And you don't want to lose at that point. You've come so far.
So going a little bit back in time to the opening reward challenge of day 2, this would be the memory match challenge. We flip tiles and try to match them.
I basically didn't play that challenge, so I forgot about it too.
Yeah, so like certain players get sent to different tribe sites, and you end up getting sent very quickly back to your own tribe. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, I don't think I'm that good at memory anyways, so I was actually kind of happy that I got sent back. I was surprised that I got sent back.
Who sent you back?
Reynolds. And I didn't talk to Reynolds pregame. I knew Reynolds just from being in the Reelfoot community, and
Reynolds saying, "I'm trying to get my Chula baby idols in the memory competition, but it worked only for you."
Yeah, he sent Clark back too. I think he had to send 2 people back. Yeah, I was excited to be sent back, because I was hoping there would be something, but I didn't know if it would be, or I obviously didn't even find it that first time. So I was excited to get sent back. I didn't know if Reynolds sent me back as a strategy. I appreciate you, Reynolds, if you did that. I kind of thought you were maybe thinking that, I don't know, maybe I was being just too full of myself and thinking you thought I was good at memory, even though I wasn't.
Reynolds says
Oh,
we'd seen the handlers go back to camps. We thought maybe to
yeah.
hide the idols.
Yeah. So that's the other thing, too. I was saying before, I don't think the idols were even hidden on day
Well,
one. So they were probably hidden
Carlos
that day.
found his idol pretty early in the game. So I
That's
think
true,
they
though.
were
You're
hidden.
right. You're absolutely right. I remember him saying that. I remember hearing about that now. So yeah, maybe it was. Anyways, so maybe they were hidden, or maybe they just went back to put the clues up or something. That could have been it. Or one of our handlers maybe stayed back. I think Storm may have stayed back to set something up. So those are little things. Like, good on you, Reynolds, for seeing that, because I don't know that I saw that. Anyway, so yeah, I was fine with it. I was just hoping that Carly didn't get sent back, because she was really the MVP of that challenge. I listened to a little bit of her deep dive where she talked about like feeling like she was very useful to our tribe in that challenge, and gaining some goodwill. And I mean, she put it out there like, I'm a puzzle and memory person, and she backed it up. So I was just hoping she didn't get sent back, and I was a little surprised to get sent back, but I was okay with it.
And so, what happens when you arrive at camp?
Yeah, I get back to camp. Storm is filming me the whole time, so I'm like, okay, we'll see what happens. And I get there, and there's a clue kind of propped up in our little like nature guide that's there, and so I read the clue, and I thought I'd have like 2 minutes. I was like, oh my god, they're going to be back the whole time. I thought people were going to come back right away. But the clue was something about a rainbow, something about it not being too far from camp, and it being an idol. So I knew that there was an idol. I had the hardest time finding this thing, and I felt like the whole time Storm was filming me, and I was like, I look so dumb on camera right now. Hopefully people aren't watching this. But I looked, it said it was close to camp. I looked over, and there was a spot that wasn't close to camp, but the way that the light was shining, there was like some paint on a tree, and I thought it was multiple colors, and I was like, oh, rainbow. So I ran down at one point, and of course I didn't find it. And I looked in several spots. I mean, I looked in the spot that it ultimately was. There was like this rainbow shaped log that if you're sitting at camp at a certain angle, you can see it's like 2 feet into the woods. So I went there and I looked, but apparently it was buried, but not very much buried. And I didn't look. I kind of looked on the right side of the rainbow. I thought I looked all around, but apparently I didn't. And I ended up like, thinking, oh, well, several times I was like, the fire can't go out, because they're going to be like, what was he doing? He let the fire go out. Because that was the one thing people said, was like, make sure the fire is okay. So I was making sure the fire was okay. And then I decided to burn the clue, because I was like, I don't know. I don't want to have any evidence on me, or have somebody find that I found a clue. And, the fact that I didn't even have the idol, I was like, I'm not going to get caught with a clue and then be like, oh, I don't have an idol. And then people don't believe me, but I really don't have an idol. That would be the worst case scenario. So I memorized the clue, burned the clue, and then kept looking. But eventually I was like, oh, these people are just going to come back and see me looking, and I'm not even going to have anything. So I eventually heard them coming, kind of walked down the trail to find them, and they had all the equipment that they had won and things. So, yeah.
You also get to hear about Adam's adventure, because he gets sent to a different tribe.
Yeah. So he came. So yeah, when they got back, Tony was there. I was happy to see Tony, because he was my guy. So it was fun to see him. He didn't give us a whole lot, which I don't blame him for, but we just kind of chatted with him. We didn't really stress him too much about information. But when Adam got back, this was I mean, I'm probably gonna have a hard time remembering all of this, but Adam, said that basically he got there and they sat him down and, basically said, oh, go try out our hammock, because he went to the Blue Tribe that had the cool hammock. And then he said like it was chaos, and they ran everywhere looking for idols, and like didn't pay him any attention, blah, 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 and just like ran around. And then eventually people came back, and he said that Frank was grilling him. Like, it sounded like they were like bullying him. And I actually still don't fully know what the true story was, but I think it's probably somewhere in the middle, because I've heard conflicting stories. But he was trying to paint a picture of, they were trying to get information from me. I didn't give it to them. And I don't actually think that he gave them a bunch of information, but I don't think they were going as hard as he said that they were. So yeah, that was an interesting story. We were kind of like, oh, they must be like really mean. I don't know why they were doing that to you. Like, we were just very nice to Tony. So yeah, it was interesting. At that point, it's a tough position for Adam, right? Like, I'm glad that I wasn't in his position to have to go back to someone else's camp, because what do you say when you get back, right? Like, how do you describe that? You don't want to say it went too well, because then people are gonna be like, oh, you have a bunch of allies on that tribe.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you want to paint a target on those people, or like, make some distrust of them. I don't know. So I thought I just took it at face value and was like, I'm just going to go with this. And we had no way of seeing, or really knowing that that was true or not. So I just chose to believe him. But it was definitely an interesting story, and kind of thought about how he could have told us anything, because we really didn't know.
Did you have people asking about what happened when you got back to camp?
No, honestly, no. And I was like, so I did, I think it was Skylar. It was somebody, I can't remember. One person asked me, did you, oh no, it was Megan. It was Megan. She was like, did you find a clue, or did you get a clue? And I was like, no, I didn't get anything. And no one else. That was something that was on my mind too, is like, people are going to know that I got a clue. And like, if I didn't find the idol, it sucks, because I'm not going to have the idol and people are going to assume that I do. So that's, like I said, worst case scenario. But honestly, nobody asked me, and I don't really know why. I don't know if it's because we weren't losing, or if people just didn't want to make waves. We weren't really strategizing all that much yet. So no, really nobody asked me except for one person. And I lied and said no, and it didn't come up really again.
You mentioned that Megan later found a clue in the chair that your tribe won.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Megan's chair, which thankfully it was her chair, because I don't know. I think she sat in a chair in her season or something. Anyways, we knew that it was going to be Megan's chair when we won it, like, it was going to be hers. So she got it. We were like, oh yeah, Megan, have to open up your chair. She opened it. I guess there was a clue. Like, it was one of those like fold out chairs, camping chair. There was a clue in there. She picked it out and just put it right away, like in her clothes or something. And then she pulled me aside, I want to say that next morning, maybe, or that day. I think it was in the morning that she talked to me. Anyways, yeah, she found a clue. Nobody knew. And then she told me about it. And when she told me about it, she was like, hey, I got to tell you something. And I had already lied to her about not having a clue. So I was like, oh gosh. So she told me, she's like, I got a clue. She told me what the clue was. And this was at a time when everybody was dispersing looking for firewood. And so she and I kind of went off in a certain direction. We were both back at the camp part, because our camp was like a big long trail to get to our camp. People were down the trail. We were there. I knew immediately when the clue was read to me, I knew immediately where it was, because it was like rainbow. And there was one other part of the clue, I can't remember, but one other part of the clue that I knew, like, it's going to be at that stick, that root. And so I went over and immediately like found it, put it in my pocket. I don't know if she was down there with me, because she wasn't looking at me. It might've been somebody else, because nobody knew I had it at first. And then I was like, oh, I need to tell Megan, like, she has the clue. She's gonna be looking for it. So I pulled her aside at one point and said, I found it, and kind of just acted like I found it based off of her clue, when in reality, like, because I had both clues, I knew exactly where it was. There was no denying where it was at that point. So I got it within like a couple minutes after she told me the clue. And then I told her that I got it.
Okay. And so you only told Megan. Did you ever tell anyone else you had the idol?
I did not. No, I chose not to tell anybody. And that was tough, because I was making good relationship with Skylar. Like, if I hadn't found it with Megan, I definitely would have told Skylar. But because Megan and I found it together, like, we found it, it was her clue, I found it. So we said we found it together. And because we told each other, like, we're not going to tell anybody else, I didn't want to go back on that, like, immediately. I just thought that'd be too messy. And I hoped that I could get to a point where I could share that with somebody if I needed to, and be like, hey, I couldn't share with anybody, the secret of the idol. You really have to keep close to your vest and whatever. So at that point, I was like, Megan knows I can't stir the pot by telling anybody else. And we actually did a joint confessional. It was pretty fun. Like, it worked out, because we were the last two people to have to do confessionals that round. And we both walked down, because there were two handlers. So we each went to a handler, but we got far enough away and we were like, hey, can we do a joint confessional? And so we showed it together and, like, got to talk about it. And then we did our own confessionals. So that was fun. We got to celebrate having an idol, whatever, but I didn't want to tell anybody else. And then I was really thankful that I found it because I felt like, okay, it was her clue, but I found it and we're going to use it together. But then I had it on my person. And so that was just really important to me. So I felt very lucky because I had that clue, couldn't find it. And the survivor gods were smiling down on me and gave me another clue, and I ended up with it. So that was super cool moment in the game.
If you hadn't gotten that second clue from Megan, do you think you would have gone back and investigated that log more and found it eventually, or?
I mean, I would have liked to think so, but at the same time, I didn't. Given time to think about it, I probably would have gone over the clue some more, thought about like, what are the areas that make the most sense? And the thing I didn't put together is like rainbow, meaning the rainbow arch of the route. So it hopefully would have clicked, but I thought to myself, like, I already looked there. So it would have gotten to the point where I was like, I got to start looking in the same places. And then everyone's around. It's really hard to search. So I would like to think that I would have, but the clue was definitely what I needed to find it.
This reminds me of when I played Reelfoot and I got a clue the Moody Idol. It took me a good over 24 hours to finally figure out where that thing was. And just like, what does it mean? I don't know.
Yeah, it's good to know that there are more than just me because I definitely felt like, man, people would have found it so quick with this. So you're like on Survivor, of course, they're showing the cameras and like pointing it at the idol. It's just above their head and they're not seeing it. And you're like, come on, like, don't you look everywhere? And like, yes, I looked everywhere and couldn't find it. So
it's a little different when you're sleep deprived, not eating.
It is, yeah. And then feeling like the nervousness of like, oh my God, I haven't found it yet. You're like psyching yourself out because you know people are watching. So anyways, yeah, that was a cool moment. I was really happy to have that. And honestly, to have found it with Megan, like she felt good enough about me to come and tell me that clue and know that, hey, like I want to share this with you. I felt awesome about that because like she could have told that to anybody.
So talk to me about the dynamic of this tribe and what's it, and like, cause let's think of like, we're kind of late afternoon, mid afternoon, day 2. Like what do things look like on this tribe?
Yeah, so we hadn't gone to any tribals, obviously.
You're just before your first immunity challenge.
Yeah, so I was definitely starting to think about like at least making sure that I knew I was good with people. And so in terms of the dynamics, there was a definite group that formed basically. So it was Megan, myself, Todd, Skylar, and Adam. So that was a 5 with Carly and Corey on the outs. And that was only really because like the 5 of us were in a group together and I don't know who said what. I think it might have been Todd, but somebody was just like, hey, this is a good group. Like, let's stick together, whatever. And so you're going to cling on to anything that you have. And so I just kind of knew that was a good spot for me. And I felt like I was good with Megan. I was good with Skylar. I was good with Todd. We had a couple conversations just talking, not about the game, but I was like, I'm good in this 5. So if we have to go to a tribal council, like that's going to work. And then at a certain point, this might've been the next day, but like at a certain point we still hadn't gone to a tribal, and the 4 guys were kind of at the edge of our camp, and we're like, okay, we're going to like, and I wasn't leading this, but of course, like if I'm involved, I'm going to say yes. It was like, okay, yeah, we're going to do a guys thing. Look out, guys look out for each other, whatever. And then I was like, yeah, cool. That's cool. But I knew that I had Megan, I had Skylar that I was close to, and I wanted to play with those people. So I wasn't really in on the guy thing, but I was happy to have a 4. So I feel like I was pretty good. And I also had a couple conversations with Corey, and Carly and I talked a little bit too. Carly and I didn't get super duper close until our swap tribe, but I felt like we at least had a conversation. So I felt like the dynamics were that groups were forming, but nobody was ever like the target. Like we never talked about who we would vote out or like, until we had got to that point, which we didn't on that tribe, but I knew that I was going to be safe. So I was good with that. I was just going to ride that out.
Did you have a sense of who people might have been pushing for, or do you know who you would want to push for?
I didn't want to push for anybody. I wasn't gonna push. Definitely wasn't gonna push. I feel like because the 5 that came together at the beginning, excluding Carly and Corey, it probably would have been one of those 2. I honestly don't know who it would have been. I feel like.
Do you feel like Skylar was in any trouble in this tribe?
I don't think so. I mean, at least not with me. I don't know what other people had said, but I feel like she was in the 5 that had come together originally. I at least don't think she would have been the first out. If we had gone to several tribals, her name might have come up. But I definitely wouldn't have wanted her to go, and I would have I probably would have fought for her to stay, because we had talked, pregame and had a good relationship and wanted to stay together. So she's one that I would have, tried to angle for people not to go for her if I caught wind of that. But I wasn't doing a whole lot of fighting in that first potential round or second potential round, because for me, I felt like I was good with enough people. And if one of the people that I was super close with wasn't going, it's tough to put your game on the line for that.
Yeah.
And if it was the reverse, like I wouldn't have expected anyone to put their game on the line for me at that point either. So it was kind of that thing where you get the people, and if somebody goes, like, unfortunately they have to go, but it's not you.
So you head to your first immunity challenge. And so this is a multi-part challenge with swimming, some ball tossing, a puzzle at the very end. I feel like this is another challenge where you stand out because you're one of the swimmers, and you are one of the swimmers that don't struggle in this challenge.
Yeah, I didn't want to swim. It was cold, and the storm was coming in. It was windy, but I felt like for our tribe to have a good chance to win, or the best chance to win, I should say, like, I was a swimmer in high school. I swam competitively, and I knew that swimming is probably a weaker spot for most people, just because not everybody swims. And so I thought, like, I'm going to put myself out there. And again, like, the competition starts and I just go for it. So, like, yeah, I was pretty good at the swim, and felt good about giving my tribe a lead. And also, like, it's at the very beginning. If swimming's at the end and I know we have a good lead, like, yeah, I don't have to, go out and try to kill it. But it was at the very beginning. You're like shot out of a cannon. And so, yeah, I did the swim and tried to put my tribe in as much of a lead as possible. And honestly, I thought that we were killing it and, like, it was going to be no problem. But that puzzle at the end, nothing against people that did the puzzles, it was extremely hard. And the puzzle's always the equalizer. That part, we got very close to not winning. Like, it came down to, I think Josh was the one that won the puzzle for the Blue Tribe. And for the, for us, it was Carly that was doing the puzzle, and she did a great job on it. And then I think Lydia was doing the other puzzle. It came down to, we were second and Lydia was like one piece away. So thinking back on whether it's worth it or not to get that lead in the swim and show off the fact that you're, good at swimming or whatever, or losing the challenge, like, if I would have dogged it a little bit, we probably would have lost. So looking back on it, I'm super happy I did that, but it probably did expose a little bit about, my physical challenge threat, I guess.
So with the Red Tribe going to the tribal council, was there anyone in particular you would like to have seen voted out from that tribe first, or out of that tribe?
I didn't really have a good sense of, I was shocked that it was who it was. I didn't think that
Sebastian,
that it would be, they didn't think that it would be that vote, and it seemed like it was chaos. So I didn't really know what would happen. So no, at that point, I didn't really know a ton of them in terms of, like, this game. I knew a couple people from that tribe from my first game, but I was just hoping it wasn't somebody that I already had a relationship with.
So as you kind of round out day 2, could you rank the other players in your tribe from, like, most important to your game to least important to your game at that point?
Most important to least important to my game. I think at that point, only because of the idol connection, Megan was probably closest or top of the list for me, just because she knows the secret of the fact that I have an idol, and I don't want her to tell anybody that, or to blow up my spot. And obviously we were sharing it, so that was probably number one. And then I'd say Skylar probably second, because I was really close to her in terms of wanting to move forward. And then probably Adam, just because I had a relationship with him previous from my last season. Todd, and then probably Carly, Corey, just because I hadn't gotten close to them. They were the ones that at that point, like, I hadn't had these conversations with. They weren't in the 5 that we were working with. So probably least, although, Carly ended up being super important to my game. So it's, you never know what's going to happen. So I look back on that and I'm like, yeah, should have had more conversations earlier and gotten to know her more. So, yeah.
So day 3, you see that Bash is voted out, and you have your next immunity challenge. This is a blindfold challenge where you're collecting there's different stations, including like collecting
Yes.
items, doing an alphabet puzzle, like a math sequence puzzle. Where were you in this challenge?
I was a caller, and Corey and I worked together. I was really excited to work with Corey on that part because I wanted to, again, make
Hmm.
some social bonds with him and actually have a something we worked on together. I was a caller, so I was standing on top of the wooden structure and yelling at Corey. He was blindfolded and he was running around looking for,
Hmm.
I think they were blocks, and then he had to stack the blocks in a certain way with the blindfold on. So, yeah, I screamed my head off in that challenge and lost my voice temporarily. But that was a fun challenge. I was happy that I was working with Corey because I hadn't really built a relationship that much with him as compared to other people. I felt like I could do the yelling part, and also I was first, and I never wanted to put myself in a spot where I was last if I could help it, because I didn't want that pressure. But
Hmm.
yeah, that was where I was, very first part of that challenge, and then it moved on to, I think, Todd and Carly, I think, were on the next part,
Hmm.
and then Megan and Adam, I think, did the last part. I can't remember who was on the last part, but yeah, we were split up 3-3-3. I think one person sat out.
Your tribe ends up winning, sending Red back to tribal council, where Clark is the next person voted out.
Yeah, I was so bummed to see Clark go. I was so happy to see Clark there. I thought like he definitely deserved a second chance, and was glad to see him survive the first vote. And yeah, I was really bummed. That he's one person that I got to play with a little bit in my season. I was also responsible for voting him out in my first season, so I wanted to be able to work with him a little bit and just have him be in the game longer. So yeah, that was a tough one. I was very
Hmm.
bummed.
And then you have your third immunity challenge, which is gross food. What did you end up eating anything for this?
I did. I ate the eggplant with mustard on it.
How did it taste?
It was great. It was actual food. I was like loving it. The problem with that one was just the volume of food that you had to eat. But otherwise, like, I love mustard. It's like regular yellow mustard, and I don't often eat like uncooked eggplant. But at that point, you're starving. Like anything's going to be good. I felt like, other than the onion, which like, yeah, sorry Taylor, that was, was terrible for her and for everyone that had to eat an onion. No, she struggled the most with it. I thought most of the food was fine. I mean, like, if it was super, like, I don't know, like the texture got you or something, like there were certain elements of that could get gross for people. But I kept like, I wanted to volunteer to go first, but then I didn't, and then I was like, oh, I should go second, and then I didn't, and I think I was like fourth, because I think, did Todd go last? I can't remember. I don't think I was last, but I just kept like, oh, is this going to be a good one? Is it, because I really thought it was going to be something
Hmm.
way more gross than it was. But when it got to me, I think it was just about getting all of that food down, especially with not eating, your stomach's probably shrunk.
Hmm.
But I was having a great time. I was like licking mustard off my fingers. I was like,
Because
please,
did you
give me
compete in
more.
the gross food challenge in your original season?
No, that was the challenge right after I got voted
Okay,
out. So I watched that one, and that I think they did a
it was
blender
way nastier
challenge.
because it had a
Yeah, I
blender and like stuff
remember.
was being put in the blender constantly
Yes,
and new stuff added. It was like, ugh.
yes, that was bad. I remember being in that moment, like, obviously wish I was still in the game, but I was like, okay, not a bad spot to get voted out if you're going to have to go out before any. Like, it would suck to play that challenge and then get voted out.
Hmm.
That would have been terrible. So
So over the course of that third day, you win all the challenges. I think Nate is the next person who's voted out. Do you, I guess, do you wish your tribe had lost the challenge? Do you wish your tribe had tested alliances?
yeah, and we even said that in the game, so it's not just like a hindsight thing. I was definitely, and we didn't say it like to everybody. Obviously, it's like, okay, well, one person would have to go at that point. But the people that I was close with, I was talking kind of like, it'd be kind of nice to, maybe go to one tribal and not to test the bonds. Yes. And I was thinking that for myself, of like, definitely want to test the bonds with who I have bonds with, but also just to not come across, because we knew a swap was coming at a certain point, just to not come across as like the dominant tribe. And feeling like, whoever you swap with, you're probably going to have, if you don't have straight up numbers, you're going to have a lot of numbers on your tribe if you never went to tribal, and they're going to want to pick you off. So it just made it much easier for us to be the tribe that knew that no one, that everyone knew that no one had to be voted out from, versus if we just had to vote out one person, I feel like that facade wouldn't have been as much of
Mhm.
like, oh, they're such beasts, they won every challenge, like we want to go against them. It'd be like, okay, well, everyone voted out someone, so the numbers could have been more fluctuated. But yeah, I felt good enough about my position that I didn't think I would get voted out. So it wasn't to a point where we were going to throw a challenge, but it was more so to the point where like I'd be fine if we went to tribal. I wouldn't like at
Mhm.
a certain point you win the first couple and you're like, okay, we could lose this one. I wouldn't care. And then we won, and I was like, okay, well, I'm glad we won, but it would have been fine if we went.
Yeah, because there's definitely in the swap, there's a mentality of kind of like go after the yellows, right? You see that with what happens with Corey and Skylar getting targeted on that one tribe, and then in your tribe, it kind of becomes a yellow versus blue and red in a sense, with Josh in the middle.
Yeah, right. And even though we didn't have straight up numbers to go against blue and red have a consensus to be like, yeah, those, I mean, there were also other relationships going on there too, but you always have that target on your back if you never lost and never
Mhm.
even had to go to a tribal. So, and it's just fun to go to tribal sometimes. It's like, I mean, there's always a
It's fun
threat
when you have
that you're going to go
immunity going to
home.
tribal.
I mean, it is fun, but it's also like there's a part about playing the game, right? Like
Yeah.
you want to play the game. You want to go to tribals. And I talked at the beginning about how I went to enough tribals last time I played, so I was fine with where I was at. But there is a part of you that's like, okay, I want to play a little bit.
Well, I think
So
it's especially pivotal early on because at this point it sounds like there are some like vague alliances formed, but there's no like outright strategy talk, right?
yeah. Well, like case in point, yeah, exactly. You're right. And case in point, like I went to my swap tribe with Carly, and like we were friends. Like I liked Carly, had a good time talking about things with her and
Mhm.
bonding, but we never really had to strategize other than being like, hey, like I feel
I
good
got your
about
back.
you, or hey, like yeah, like just feel good about the fact that you're winning, and that bonds you. But I would have definitely had a better relationship with her had she survived the first vote. Um, if we had gone to a tribal. So
Mhm.
it's one of those things where it can actually help you
Mhm.
if you're not the person that goes, obviously. And so I went into a swap feeling like I should have all these numbers, and I did technically, but I knew Todd from being on my tribe, but like we never had to vote together. We never had to be like, yeah, brother, I'm gonna vote with you, and then we actually did it. So I was still like, okay, I hope these people are still Galelo strong, but we never had to prove it. And I'm sure they
Yeah.
were thinking the same thing about me because we got on that tribe and like there was Amber, who I'd worked with or who I'd played with before. So it's like you always think, especially in a returnee season, who's
Mhm.
got relationships with who. And in a way, like not saying poor us who never went to tribal, but like other folks that did, I think had a certain advantage that we didn't.
Yeah. So, were you anticipating the swap happening?
We were,
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of exactly when it happened.
So it's like later afternoon, day three. That this is gonna be the fourth immunity challenge of the day that you're
Yes,
heading
we
to.
went to a challenge. We were going to do the challenge where you pull the rope.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. So we were anticipating it definitely earlier than it happened. And I think at that point we were like, okay, the sun's going down. Like we're not going to swap at the end of the day. And I should have known for my last season that we would have. But I think we thought we would go to the challenge, play the challenge, do one more tribal and then swap in the morning. But when we got there and we saw the different buckets where we ended up going and picking out our buffs for the new tribes. And I thought it was like a throw a ball in a bucket part to the
Mhm.
challenge. So I didn't even know that it was coming from there. So I was truly surprised when Parker said drop your buff, which was a fun experience.
So you swap and you end up moving from the yellow tribe to the red tribe, that Chila tribe. And so you
Yep.
go from a group of 7 to a group of 9, and it's an interesting group of 9, right? So you're one of 4 original yellows. So you swap with Carly,
Mm-hmm.
Todd, and oh gosh, I'm missing a person. I feel bad about that.
Adam.
And Adam. And then you
Yeah.
get three original Blue members of Amber Reynolds and Josh, who nearly got voted
Mm-hmm.
out. That's most previous tribal council. And then you get 2 original Red tribe of Lydia and Taylor.
Yep.
Talking about the tribe, this new tribe dynamic.
It was an interesting. I think it was set up to where we all went to. There were 3 buckets, and our tribes went to the bucket. So I think it was
Mm-hmm.
set up to be like somewhat even,
Mm-hmm.
but it was pretty even, like you said. So the 4 of us, which was nice, and then 3 and 2. Um, I was happy with it. was really glad that we had Carly and Josh because they were both killer at puzzles. So I was pretty happy about that. I didn't know a ton about, or I didn't know Taylor a ton. I had seen her on her season. Didn't know Lydia, from anything except just knowing that she was on her season. Knew Amber, obviously knew Reynolds, and then all the other people were on my tribe. So I felt good about the fact that I knew most of the people at least a little bit, or had a conversation with them either before the game or on a season that I was on with them or on my original tribe. There were only a couple people that I just hadn't talked to besides pregame when we first arrived on site. And the fact that we won that first challenge together, you're just super nervous when you swap, right? It doesn't matter who you're with, whether you feel like you have numbers or not. You're worried about going to that first tribal and being on the short end of those numbers. So the fact that we won that, we got to go back for a night and enjoy ourselves and not have to worry about putting somebody out and just get to know each other. That was a cool part of it. I was definitely nervous just because I felt like I was, in terms of people who were challenge threats or whatever. We weren't that close to the merge yet, so it wasn't like people are going to go big game hunting before the merge. But I figured I would have a chance to get voted out if we went to tribal. But once we won that and we got to go back and have a night together, I felt pretty good about the group.
Yeah. So how was life at the Red Camp?
It was fun. They had a good camp. So we actually, because we won that challenge, we got to decide whether we were going to go back to Galelo or go to Achila. And I was on the side of go back to Galelo because I felt like we had a pretty good camp. We had a bunch of firewood we had just collected, all that stuff. But honestly, that would have been a mistake. I think the Achila camp was better. It was a little more open. They had a good, tarp over them and stuff. Great fire pit and place to hang. But it was good. I think we all enjoyed each other. That first night, I remember, I think it was the first night. I think because everything went down the second day, I'm pretty sure. I think there's some people that didn't sleep that night. It was so cold. It was freezing and people just sat by the fire. I actually fell asleep for a little bit, but then I woke up. It was still dark, probably 2 a.m. and everyone was by the fire. I just got up and got my little tarp around me that I told you I brought as my rain protector and just sat by the fire. And I was loopy, delirious, and everyone was laughing and we were just making jokes. And Lydia had her freaking frog hoodie on and it was just funny. And that's one of my favorite moments of the game. Is just 2 a.m. Nobody's sleeping, nobody's really happy, but you're all loving life. That's the fun part about playing a game like this. Is you're just bonding, and the next day we're going to go to challenges and maybe I'd vote somebody out. But in that night, we were all struggling. We all hated the fact that we weren't sleeping, but we just embraced it. And so I appreciated everybody in my tribe for that, because part of me is gotta sleep, gotta get up for the challenges the next day. And they were just let's just laugh and have fun. And this fact that we're freezing and sitting by this fire and literally burning ourselves trying to get our hands close to this fire. I think Amber dropped one of her socks on accident. She was trying to dry them out on the side of the fire pit. So we had a great time. That was honestly one of my favorite nights, even though it was one of the most miserable sleep-wise.
Is there anyone you want to see get voted out from the Blue Tribe the next day?
From the other tribe, the Galelo tribe?
So you're on the Red Tribe now. The Blue Tribe is going to the tribal council the next day to vote someone out for the first time.
Oh, they were the Blue Tribe. That's right. They went to Galelo camp. They weren't the Galelo tribe. Sorry, I mistook that. I think at a certain point, I did want Frank to get voted out because he and Todd had this rivalry where they were chirping back and forth at each other at a challenge, and Todd had left his a Texas flag.
Oh yeah.
It was his Texas flag, but not a buff, but a bandana. And Frank had put it on his stick. And thinking back on that, I'm that's so funny. That's great. I'm glad that he did that. But in the moment, I was no, I have to defend my boy Todd. And so I was I don't know, I yelled something at Frank just as they were walking away. And then I told production, I was can you get that back, please? He shouldn't have that. I don't know, sleep deprived and just in the moment, pissed off. But so I probably wanted him to go. But honestly, I was hoping my people would make it through. There were several people there that I didn't really know a ton. So I didn't really have a strong preference at that point.
Talk to me about your interactions with Amber. You and Amber both played in the same swap tribe Takali in your original season, but Amber ends up voting you out and making merge while you don't. Was there a lot of like, hey, we can work together now, or did you feel like there was a divide between you two on this new tribe?
Yeah. Oh, Amber. Amber is great. I love Amber, but yeah, it's a really interesting relationship because last time we played, I bonded with her, but we were swapped. We were obviously against each other. I don't think she like led the vote to get me out, but she definitely wasn't. Well, maybe she did because I tried to vote her out. Anyways, it was a roller
Wait,
coaster.
I need to check who you actually cast a vote for that round. I never looked at that.
Well, I definitely voted for Amber the first, like when I didn't go home, but Tony went home. I definitely voted for Amber because I was like I had tried to make bonds
Oh,
with
you vote for her
the
twice.
pink. Yeah. Well, at the second time, I
Yeah.
was just like,
Well, no. So like
I voted for her once.
the vote that Amber goes out. No, the vote that Tony goes out. You and Tony both play your extra vote.
Yeah.
And so you cast a collective 4 votes in Amber. The next round you vote for Jack. And I
Oh,
think you
okay.
and I think you block Jack's vote as you leave.
Yeah, damn right I did because Jack was someone I thought I was going to have with me to vote out Amber, and he did not. So I was pissed at him. But
Jack
now he's on.
got vote blocked a lot that season.
Yeah, he was a funny kid. He also like faked being sick in the woods at a tribal council to make people think that he like not to vote him out because he was sick, and that was classic. So yeah, he was a lot of fun to play with. But yeah, so we had that, and then when we found out we were each going to be on the season, like I don't know, we didn't really talk a lot, but she reached out and she's like, "Hey, I'm excited you're going to be on the season." I was like, "Yeah, me too. Like, hopefully we can work together if we get the
Mhm.
chance." Blah blah blah. And then I don't know. I listened to her deep dive, and I think there was one point where she said like, she didn't ever think I would work with her, and I don't know, like just like yeah, I guess she voted me out, but I was also hoping to have a clean slate and like not have that be defining our interactions in this
Mhm.
season. And I guess I didn't think that she would have that like Brent will never work with me mentality. And thinking back on our interactions in this season, like I maybe because we hadn't gone to a tribal before, but when we got to our swap tribe, I still wasn't trying to like rock the boat, especially if
Mhm.
since we were winning. So I didn't have a ton of like, I mean, I had conversations with people, but I didn't want to go off one on one and like
Mhm.
make it obvious because nobody's really doing that. And so Amber at a certain point was just like, "Hey, whenever you want to talk, like let's talk." And I was like, "Okay, I have to." So we went off and talked at a certain point, and I was just telling her, I want to work with you. Like, I feel good about you. I know you. Like
Mhm.
let's work together. Let's have each other's backs. And I think that she thought I was really close with my tribe members on the swap tribe, and then on the other the other swap tribe, which was true. And I probably looking back on it would have made it more clear to her that like, hey, I'd like to work with you, and like I feel a bond with you because we played
Mhm.
together. I think she probably thought I was mad at her because she voted me out, or like held a grudge, or that I would have gone after her. Not saying that I wanted Amber to be my final two, and I think we both knew that like that's not the position that we were in. But I was really surprised that it came down to the fact that it seemed like she definitely wanted to vote me out, and like I was her number one target. It makes sense because I was pretty well connected, but I thought she was somebody I would be connected with, and I guess I didn't make it clear enough that that's something I wanted. And I tried to go into the season with the mentality that like when you swap, you have people that were on your tribe, but this is your tribe.
Yeah.
Like these are the people you're going to work with. And thinking back on it, like I probably should have made a more clear stand on that, and probably should have done a better job talking to Taylor and talking to Lydia and talking to Reynolds. But you're also worried about your tribe getting skittish because we hadn't gone to a tribal council, so they might have looked at that and been like, "Well, I don't know if I trust Brent anymore because he's having all these conversations." So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But because we had that relationship, I was just really surprised when it turned out, and there were other factors in that too. But I was just really surprised when it turned out that she
Mhm.
was like gunning for me.
Talk to me about Reynolds. Right, you met him when he was a handler in your season. He sent you back, and you found an idol. You found an idol clue as a result of that second reward challenge. He's very close with Amber. What were your interactions with him like in this tribe?
Yeah, we didn't talk a ton. I never got a good read on Reynolds, and maybe that's like kudos to Reynolds. He never came across as like too hot or too cold.
Mm-hmm.
We had some like friendly interactions. He asked me if I found a clue when he sent me back, and I was like, no, I didn't get a clue, blah, blah, blah. And like, obviously, I'm sure he knew that was a lie, but I couldn't tell him in that moment. So
Mm-hmm.
we didn't really have a ton of strategic conversations. It was more so like, social conversations, and I felt good about him. But again, I didn't go out of my way to have like a strategic conversation other than just to say like, like, hey, I like you as a person. We've known each other. Like, I want to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
And he said the same thing, but I, don't think that was true. And it wasn't the most true thing on my part either. Like, I know that Reynolds is a hard player. I know that he has a lot of relationships. I wasn't sure if people like him that were on earlier seasons would even make it that far because they were severely outnumbered by people in later seasons. But the fact that he made it that far, like, everyone knows who Reynolds is. Like, everyone probably wants to work with Reynolds. So I wasn't at the same time like thinking he'd be someone that's end game with me, but I thought we were at least like close enough that we could, work together or look out for each other.
You're also meeting Taylor for the first time.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And Taylor and I mostly talked in group settings, like, and that was, again, probably something I wish I'd done a little more of, like one-on-ones. But yeah, I got a good feeling from Taylor. I feel like she, looking back on it, keeps her cards close to the vest and like doesn't like open up strategically a lot. But I did feel like we had a bond. I know that she really bonded with Adam, and I figured like, I know Amber, like Adam is really bonding with Taylor, so this is good. Like, we're kind of getting our relationships in a row. But I felt good about her. I mean, Taylor's great. I enjoyed getting to know her, but I did feel good about her, and we did try to talk strategically when we were talking about who we had to vote out, and we did have some of those conversations, but I think there were just some relationships that were already entrenched with her, that she had, and like other people on the other side she wanted to work with when she got to the merge. So I think I underestimated the amount of relationships that she probably already had.
Lydia is also a player meeting for the first time, and she has the best wardrobe of the season. But what were your interactions with her?
Yes, she does. I feel like we also mostly talked in group settings. I mean, Lydia's fairly quiet. She's really great. I really liked getting to know her in the jury, or not in the jury, in the pre-merge. But yeah, I just didn't get a good sense of that. And again, probably should have had more one-on-one conversations with her. I think we talked in group settings, like I said, but I didn't really get a chance to, or not that I didn't get a chance. I didn't go out of my way to talk to her, and probably felt at a certain point like I had my people that in my tribe that I was with already, and I felt like I really trusted. I knew Amber, I knew Reynolds. Not that I didn't need to talk to other people, but at a certain point, you're like, if we're going to vote somebody out, like, the choices were kind of dwindling down for me of who I wanted to vote for or who I would have wanted to go. So maybe it just stuck out to me that like, okay, I haven't had as many conversations with these people. So like, maybe I would form up with the people I do know and vote this person out, and maybe just naturally don't talk to them as much. But yeah, definitely wish I would have talked to Taylor and Lydia more one-on-one in the game.
You mentioned earlier how the shot in the dark had a lot of ramifications in your game. One of the ramifications is Josh making it to the swap tribe instead of Nate per se. And Josh, at this point, his entire tribe has voted for him, and so I don't think I don't think he's looking very much to work with Amber Reynolds, but he's very much playing the middle between the two sides of being red and blue versus yellow. What were your interactions with him like?
Yeah, I actually did have quite a few one-on-one conversations with Josh. Like, we zeroed in on Josh because we're like, this kid just got basically voted out by his tribe, saved by a twist. Like, he is not going to want to work with them anymore. Why would he want to work with them anymore? And so all of us yellows kind of talked about it together. Like, let's try to pull in Josh, because at that point it's 9 of us and we have 4. And so we're like, well, perfect. If we can pull in Josh, that's 5. Like, that's enough for us to vote somebody out. And I had conversations with him, like, hey, how you feeling about the fact that you were turned on by your tribe? Like, want you to know that we want to work with you, and like we definitely want to help pull you into the merge and like make sure that you're protected, because we were thinking that his former tribe members would want to go for him because he like got away. You know, he was the one that got away, and he wouldn't want to work with them moving forward. So we thought that they might want to vote him out if they have the chance. So we tried to use that and be like, hey, you're part of our group. Like, you're an abandoned, you know, young kid, and he's so smart and he's very good at the game. So I definitely didn't, you know, underestimate him when it comes to that. I tried not to, but he played it well. Like, hats off to him. I was believing that he wanted to work with us, and maybe he did. Like, I feel like he was keeping his options open.
He voted with you.
He did, but he also was like in with the other group as well, and like was basically, and I could be wrong about this, but I feel like he voted with us to be able to still play the middle and like save face with the other people, because he voted with us. He didn't vote for me, but who did he vote for when we went?
He voted for
okay,
Amber.
So yeah, he voted for Amber, knowing that he didn't know I had an idol, but knowing that either I would go, or if I didn't go, that Lydia would go, because he knew that in our split we had enough people to send somebody home. So I think he voted for Amber because, and I don't know if he's still here or if he would correct the record, but I feel like that was an easy way to play the middle and look like he was with us, because he got up in terms of our conversations at the tribal. I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but I think he did a great job of playing the middle. And I think that after that vote, I definitely thought he was with us because he did vote with me, but he still had his options open.
You mentioned that Carly was a player you got to talk to a lot more in the swap tribe. Talk to me about strategizing with Carly.
Yeah, I definitely think I overlooked her, or just didn't get to know her enough pre-merge. And I liked her, don't get me wrong. We had conversations, we bonded over Taylor Swift and other amazing things to talk about. And just
Taylor Swift, the great
enjoyed
equalizer.
life. Yeah, I mean, she had gone to the show. I was going to the show later that summer, so I was just like super excited. Also, Skylar, biggest Taylor Swift stan I think that I know. But we definitely started talking. I think that she has such a good mind for the game, and I didn't get to know that when I was on our original tribe. And so when we just started having conversations, like, she was coming to me saying like, hey, I really want to work with you. I don't know if she felt like she wasn't in as much as she wanted to be on our original tribe, or that we just had a good bond, but we just started having conversations, and she was talking to me about like who she thought was having, you know, had good relationships with who, and you know, how votes would go if we went to tribal council, things like that. And I just got to see her mind at work, and I was like, you're smart, you know, this game in a way that I don't think that I do. And I think that I have a pretty good mind for the game, but I don't know that I'm a strategic like powerhouse. And I think she is. Obviously she made it very far in the game. She knows the game. And also we're a little bit different. She's super good at puzzles. You know, I'm maybe better at the physical challenges than I am at puzzles. I think we just had opposite strengths, and we could come together, and like, we didn't want to be too buddy and seem like we were making a 2 when we had a nice 4 in that group. But I think, you know, Adam was somebody who was a super social player, because he's a super social person. He was bonding with everybody, making really good friendships, it seemed like. And when you didn't go to a tribal with people, you have to wonder, is he trying to make other inroads? Is he trying, you know, and of course you probably are, everyone should be. But you look at that and you're like, is that a threat to me? Todd is somebody who would go sleep down, like would just walk down the path and go to sleep and like wait for the next challenge for the most part. So I didn't worry about Todd necessarily going off and finding other people, but like Carly was probably the person from my original tribe that I had the most chance to bond with, just because of those situations. So the fact that we had a lot of chance to talk, the fact that she has such a great mind for the game, and she's just such a cool person, that I was like, yeah, I want to work with this person. And she's coming to me saying too that she wants to work with me. So like, I realized pretty quickly on in the swap tribe that like, you know, she is a good person that I want to be an ally with and go far in the game. That was, you know, everyone jokes in our group chat, you know, we all have nicknames, and my nickname is everybody's number one, because you know, people thought that I had number ones everywhere. And like, you know, shout out to Skylar who maybe coined that phrase, or like talks a lot about how I have so many number ones. But I didn't really have like I want to be number one with this person no matter what, because like Skylar in the beginning, yeah, we had talked. I wanted to stay close with her. Then I found the idol with Megan. So I'm like, I want to work with Megan because we have this idol and I feel like this could really bond us, and then we get to the swap and it's like, okay, you really have to think about who's going to go home. So I think, Carly and I really were the first two to have a conversation of like, we're doing this. Like you and I, let's work together. We're clearly bonding. So that was probably the first time I felt like I really had like a number one in the game.
Yeah, this is something we'll talk more about. I think had you gone to merge, I feel like you would have been very much well insulated in that merge, given your relationship with Megan, which means you have Sharif, which really would change the game. And because a lot of people have named Brent was a player that was really high up there, especially from your original tribe for me, and so you going really kind of shook a lot of people's plans as a result.
Yeah, I know there were definitely people that I would have come back with, and people from my season that I, like Tony, that I would have been good with, and people that were close to people that I was close to. Like I never even got to play with Sharif, but I think, I probably, would have had an inroad with him as well. So that's probably why I got voted out, which is it's a bummer. But yeah, I felt pretty good about if I get to merge, I will have pretty good prospects. And I didn't know how Megan was doing on the other side, or anybody else. Like I knew Skylar was in trouble, so I was worried about that were on the other swap tribe. But I was hoping that I would have a pretty good foothold if I made it that far.
Well, you get to, this is day 4. You have your first community challenge of the day. May has been voted out from the blue tribe, and this next challenge is you're moving pool balls on boards with rope, and then you have this octagon puzzle at the very end, which ends up being a heads up between Josh versus Austin.
Yeah, so that was I was just part of the group that held the plate up and took the ball. That was a tough challenge. I think that was a pretty close one. Maybe, yeah, it was close because I think it came down to the puzzle. So it was one of those where we had to have a lot of teamwork, and the light just went off behind me.
Yeah, I was like, something just happened.
Yeah, oh, that's fine. We had to have a lot of teamwork. We had to bond. I think that Taylor had done that challenge before, so she had a good strategy, and she was the person that just placed the ball when we started walking. So that was a good challenge. I knew that if we got to the end with the puzzle, I felt pretty good about Josh doing it because he's just really, really good at puzzles, and I think he had done that one before. I don't remember what puzzle it was, but I knew that he had been pretty good.
It's like this kind of octagon shape.
Oh yeah, that's right, with all the different size pieces. Yeah, I don't know what's happening. Anyways.
From here, the first player from the original tribe is voted out, Corey.
Yep. Yeah, I wasn't sure how Corey would do on that swap tribe. I thought he could kind of stay under the radar and make it. I mean, I really wanted to work with Corey because I thought that he'd be a super loyal person to play with. He just very much seemed like cards up, or cards down, I guess, whatever, not going to really tell any lies. I'm just going to be loyal to people I'm loyal with, and let's just play the game. And so I didn't think that he'd necessarily be seen as a big threat or a person that had a bunch of social bonds that he needed to go. So I don't actually really know how that came about, but I was thinking I'm thinking he probably would be someone that would get maybe picked up, and people that maybe had more social bonds, maybe like a Megan or like a Skylar, who was from my original tribe, would be voted out over Corey. So I was a little bit surprised by that.
Yeah. So you next have your third challenge in these new tribes. This is where you're getting balls to a table maze and solving a table maze. So to move the balls to the chicken coop and then
the huge table
them.
Maze. Yeah. That was I was on the I think I was just on the maze. I know I was on the maze. I don't think I did anything before that. This was also a challenge that I know they did in 9, and I think they did in 10.
My season. Portion I did the table maze in my season as well. But not quite the same stuff. Not all the same pieces as the rest of your season.
I knew it had been done before, and that certain people had done it before, so they did certain parts that they had done. I know that Josh had a good handle on the getting it on the tube and getting the ball to each other, and kind of a good strategy of when you're catching it to like kind of go the opposite way for a second and then like settle it and then pass it to the next person. So I'm pretty sure we won that one by quite a ways. So that was good. I felt pretty good about that. The table maze, we had a really good strategy going of just communication, and once we had it once, you kind of do it over and over, and I think we had to do it 3 times. So yeah, that was a good one. I think we cruised through that one pretty good.
So this is when, because we'll say the game is really going to speed up on you, because this is when Frank gets voted out because Skylar successfully plays a shot in the dark. Your tribe notices Frank's stuff by the house on the way to the challenge. Kind of walk me through how things progress from there.
Yeah, so we saw Frank's stuff. We knew he was gone, or at least we assumed. So the very emotional reactions from Lydia and Amber, who both were very close with Frank and wanted to play with him. And I know that Lydia and him are like best friends, and totally get that. Like I was very sad for her. And I'm pretty sure Amber at that point thought like, well, Frank's gone, my game is toast. And she had a reaction to that as well. It was not ideal right before the challenge to have this open up like this. And I was almost like, am I being punked? Like, what's going on? Like, I didn't know that Lydia and Frank were that close at first. So I was like, I didn't understand the reaction. I was just like, is she okay? Is something else happening? Like, what's going on? She wasn't really talking a lot, which given her emotional state, I totally understand. And then Amber just got really negative. And I know she gets like one track mind and like emotional, which also I understand. But I was just like, my tired, hungry, like frustrated self that something was going wrong. I was like, come on, let's just play the challenge. Like, what's going on? Why are we doing this? Of course, part of me was feeling badly for both of them and wanting to keep my tribe mates, happy and trying to make sure things were okay. So I went up to Lydia, and she had people around her, and I didn't want to be too much of a, bother, but I was like, just trying to make sure she was okay. We had to have people sit out anyways. So I think she sat out of that challenge. I don't know if anyone else sat out, but I know she did. And then I know from part of Amber's deep dive was like, she keys on the fact that I went up to her and said something about like throwing the challenge to vote her out or something. But she was saying like, my game's done. Like, I should just quit. I should just go. And part of me was like, okay, if you're going to go, just go. Like, I don't like that attitude. And I know like she needed her time. Like, it's a totally normal human reaction. But part of me was just like, okay, like if you're going to be like that, just like, don't mess us up, please. There was also part of me that really cares about Amber, right? And like, if she was going to actually want us to go, which I feel stupid for even thinking that she would want to like self-evict or get herself voted out. But like, I know that sounded to her like a threat or like something, but I truly was thinking that in that moment, part of me was pissed and part of me was like, okay, if you really want to go, like, I don't want to vote you out, but if you really want us to do that, I will. And I truly, like, looking back on that, I know that's absurd, but I didn't think about that as being like anything other than a kind thing that I was trying to do for someone that I, consider a friend and consider someone who I cared about as a tribe mate. So anyways, that I guess kind of like turned the light bulb on for her and was like, okay, I got to make this more dramatic than I, ever intended it to be, and kind of fleshed out into her whole story arc that happened after that challenge. But it was chaos. Like, it was literally, we were off the mat. Like, I think that was Pete's challenge that he was supposed to run and like describe. He's describing it, and we have like, someone very upset, other people trying to console that person. We had Amber just like super pissed off, and me trying to talk to her. And I just felt like I was trying to get us on the mat and like listen to the challenge, but we had already lost that challenge before it even started. Like, no excuses. The other tribe did great. They deserved to win that. They got their dinner. I think it was pasta at their camp, and I was very jealous, even though I had had, some food that day already. But I was just like, man, how did this go so wrong so quickly? What happened?
Well, do you want to say anything else with the challenge? Do you want to get to the scramble afterwards?
There also was this part where I was like, I ran to the farthest one and I didn't get it right. And I thought that I knew which one it was in. It was total like brain lapse. I thought that I knew. So I told Reynolds which one it was, which ended up being the wrong one. And then so people thought that I like tried to get us to throw that challenge ultimately. And that was not the case. I just truly thought that I knew what was going on because I had done some deductive reasoning, but I was just oxygen deprived at that point from running so much. So no, we tried, we lost. We were definitely out of it, I think, from the start. I don't know of anybody from our tribe trying to throw that challenge. So I think we just totally lost, and they beat us by a mile. So it wasn't even close.
So tell me what happens when you get back to camp.
All hell breaks loose. Maybe not quite yet, but it was a shock because it was my first tribal. Like, and we had it was getting dark. It was dark at that point, so we had.
You survived, like, you skipped like 6 tribal councils, like that. Like, it has to feel good to like. It feels weird to like have first tribal council evening day 4, but also kind of feels great to say I didn't have to vote I didn't have to go to tribal council until now.
It was. I think I saw it on the wiki that was like the longest. It tied the longest that anybody had gone. I think in Reelfoot, maybe, which is kind of cool. So yeah, it was cool. It was, and at that point, I still wasn't feeling super in danger. So I was okay with it. Obviously, at that point, you're like so close to merge, and you're feeling like you just want to survive. But yeah, we got back, and so Lydia's still upset, which again, understand that, and not like bringing her down. Amber was still upset, which again, understand. Like, I think hers was maybe more of a put on at that point. But at a certain point, I was talking to people. I don't remember if it was a mixture of Adam, Todd, and Carly. And I was like, I think Amber's acting. Like, I was like, I don't think this is real, because it was just so much like, she turned on a dime so quickly, and she was just like, I'm done. Like, vote me out. I don't want to be here, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's not real. But I also care about her, and was like not wanting to be that guy. It was like, who someone's really having an emotional moment, and I'm like, oh, that's just for the game. But I was talking to her, and I was like, I don't know if what you're telling me is real. Like, I think you might have an idol, and you're faking it, basically, is what I said. And I remember, like, they were filming us, and she was like, really? Like, you think that I would do that? You think that like I would just use this for strategy? At that point, I felt bad. I was like, oh man, what an idiot. Like, I'm an a-hole. So I go and sit down with her, because she was like, I just need a minute. And she went and sat down, and I went and sat down with her, and I was like, hey, like, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean to call you out. I didn't mean to like say that you were using it for game. Like, if you're really upset, I'm sorry about that. And I like, it was so emotional and frazzled. Like, I started like getting emotional myself. I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for that. Like, and looking back on that, that's, one thing that I was like, man, I got like duped in that moment. But she was playing a game, and that's how she played it. So it was just we had to figure out somebody to vote out. And I think we were still thinking, like, if Amber actually wants to go, like, let's vote her out. But we also were like, there could be a chance she has an idol. There could be a chance that she is faking it, and like, yeah, she pulls something. So we had a backup plan of Lydia. And we were minutes from going to tribal. And because they were also, so maybe back to like the day before, I saw Adam go off with Amber. I saw Adam go off with Reynolds, which is fine. Like, I was having conversations with people too, but maybe it was earlier that day. I can't remember, but I saw them talking, and Adam came up to me, and he's like, they're throwing your name out. And that like stopped me dead in my tracks. I was like, what? Okay. So I know I have an idol. Nobody on my tribe knows I have an idol. So at that moment, like, literally they're calling us to walk to tribal. And so I'm getting ready to go, and I have this thing in my bag. I'm like, okay, do I use it? Do I not use it? Do I tell people I have an idol? Do I, what do I do here? And at that point, because I knew I had an idol, and because I didn't really want to use it, I tried to get my group to just abandon the split. and
Hmm.
just vote for somebody, because I knew at that point that I wouldn't need to use my idol, although it
Hmm.
still would have been a risk. But I probably would have been willing to take that risk because I felt good about Josh. I felt good about Taylor,
Yeah.
and I felt good about the people that I had. So I felt like we were going to be fine unless we split it, because at that point I was arguing to them like, we don't know if Amber has an idol. If we split, like, we could get screwed in this. Like, we could lose somebody because they could play an idol, the vote could be tied, revote or whatever. Like, I mean, I was just kind of worried about not wanting to play
Hmm.
my idol at that point. So I was trying to get it to, but at that point we're walking to tribal. There was not really time to do that. And so from the moment we walked into tribal, I thought to myself, I'm playing this because I want to survive to the next round. I want to keep it. I want to make, get myself into the merge, but I want to survive to the next round.
Hmm.
And I just had a feeling that I would feel so terrible if I went home with an idol and didn't get a chance to play it and
I've
didn't
done
make
that.
it.
It's not a
So
great feeling.
yeah. And like, sometimes it works, but I just couldn't have lived with myself in that moment if I was like, let me risk it. But it
Mhm.
definitely was like, it was a 50-50 chance there for a second. But as soon as we walked in, there was just so much going on, conversations happening, and not fully knowing if we had Taylor and Josh. Like, I wanted to know that we did. I felt good about them. I really did, but you never
You had
know. And
half of them.
so I just had to, yeah, that's true. So just had to play that, but it was pure chaos walking into that tribal.
Uh, Anything else you want to say about the tribal?
I don't really remember the conversations or the questions that were asked.
Hmm.
I was fully freaking out, zoning out. I know I answered one of Parker's questions, maybe more, but I don't remember. I remember there being like crosstalk between people,
Hmm.
and I remember going back and talking with our group, and Todd kind of pulling us together and being like, "You people vote Amber, you people vote Lydia," and like that's it basically, and we
Hmm.
went our separate ways. But yeah, it was like totally spaced out during that tribal, and then we got to the vote.
And so, did Amber play her idol before you, or did you play her idol first?
Pretty sure she played it first.
So Amber
Yeah,
plays her
she
idol
played it
for
first.
Reynolds. What'd you think of that?
Um, I was confused because
Hmm.
Reynolds was never our target. And obviously, she didn't know that, but from my perspective, I was like, we were never ever going to vote out Reynolds. I don't
Hmm.
know. I think he was worried. I heard that he was freaking out saying that his name, oh, he came up to me before the tribal and he's like, I heard my name. Like, I heard people are voting for me. And I was like, no one's voting for you.
Why was
Like, it
Reynolds'
truly
name
was
not coming
never
up?
something. Um, because Amber had given us the signal that she wanted to go home, and we
Hmm.
weren't sure if that was real or not.
Hmm.
But she was our target, and then I guess Lydia was the backup. I don't. It's not that I wasn't. Not that I would like. I was saving him for anything, but he of the three, he just wasn't
Hmm.
one of the people that had come up.
Yeah. So she plays her idol for Reynolds, and then you decide to play your idol.
Yeah, I mean, I'd already decided to play it, but once she played it, I kind of waited like a beat and then stood up. And she, of course, she was like, "I knew it, I knew," because people were speculating that I had an idol. And she, she exclaimed like, "I knew it!" And I turned around like trying to gather if I could gather anything from that
Hmm.
reaction. Like, obviously, I just said that I was going to play it no matter what, but in that split second, I was like, "Can I glean anything from this to maybe not play it?" And that was part of what I wanted to do. And I feel like I stood there for like 5 seconds. And I think eventually she was like, "Go ahead, like play it." And I was like, "Oh man, I got to play this." So I gave it to Parker and played it on myself. And there is, at least for me, having made it as far as I've made it in any of these
Hmm.
games, the best feeling I've had is seeing votes red for me and knowing that they were nullified. Is
Yes.
pretty
So you
cool.
get 4 votes as tribal council. Did that sort of shock you?
Um, it did and it didn't. Like on the surface, it did because I didn't feel like I was hoping that I wasn't
Hmm.
in trouble. But once they started being read, I was like, yeah, of course people were going after me. Like,
Hmm.
of course this was a ruse, and of course Amber had an idol, and of course like this, yeah, like this, it kind of fell into place of like, this was the plan. And so I wasn't surprised that there was a vote on me, a majority vote on me, because I think the thought was like, well, if Brent plays his idol, that's fine. We'll flush his idol. If not, he goes home. But that was, yeah. So it was a little shocking at first because you see your name and you're like, oh, hoped that wouldn't happen. But it kind of quickly fell into place that, yeah, I guess that's what I should have expected.
Well, true to the form, you cast your vote for Amber. Josh casts his vote for Amber. The rest of your alliance votes for Lydia, and you receive votes from Amber, Reynolds, Taylor, and Lydia. And Lydia is the next person voted out. What was the fallout going back to camp like?
I made sure to go to all my close alliance members and say, hey, I just want to let you know I didn't keep this from you for a reason, or I hadn't told anybody. Like I went up to Todd because I know that Todd is pretty, like I said before, straight shooter, honest guy. I just wanted to say, hey, I hope you're not upset that I didn't tell you. And he's like, no, man, like that's the first rule of Survivor is like, you don't share your idol. And I was like, okay, okay. That was what I was first worried about. Cause I was like, oh man, I just look like a liar in front of everybody. But people that I was working with were like, great job. Glad you played your idol. Glad you had that. Didn't know you had that, but glad you had that. And Taylor was the one that I had conversations with because she was like, yeah, I want to work with you. And she was like locked in. And I don't know if she fake cried or if she real cried, but she definitely cried. She was like, I mean, it was a lot. So I don't know if it was real or not, whatever. But she was like, I didn't know what was going on. There was a lot of confusion, which like, yeah, there was a lot of confusion. So she, voted for me and she tried to kind of make up for that. And, I was just happy that I stayed. So I wasn't looking to like stir up anything at that moment or make a big scene, but I was like, okay, you voted for me. Okay. Hopefully we won't be in this. Like I was thinking we might merge the next day before the whole loser camp thing happened. So, yeah, so there were a couple conversations and then we kind of went to bed. I think for me, I was just like upset and happy at the same time and just, okay, I'm just going to face another day and go to bed. So, I mean, there was some fallout, but there wasn't like blowout fights or anything.
If your tribe had gone to tribal council one more time, who would you have on the target?
Amber.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like at that point, it's like, okay, the gloves are off. Like, and at that point, I knew I tried to vote for her, and we weren't going to work together. So yeah, it would have been Amber.
Who are the most important people for your game at this point, end of day 4?
At that point in time, honestly, Josh was probably my not that he was my number one, but like most important person in my game. He was like the key to me moving forward at that point, if he was going to vote with me. Because, obviously Carly, Todd, and Adam, like I felt tight with and I didn't have to worry about them. So if you're thinking of like who I'm closest with, those people, but if who's most important to my game, it's way more important to my game. Because if we'd gone to another vote for Josh to have been on my side, because that would have been, we would have had 5 and then there would have been the 3 of Taylor, Reynolds, and Amber. So yeah, he was the most important piece to me. And I guess the most important with also the most uncertainty.
Well, so the next day you learn that it's not a merge just yet. You have to earn the merge in true new school Survivor fashion. And you have to choose one of 3 different competitions to take part in, either endurance, memory, or dexterity challenge. The winners from those challenges are safe. The losers will go to one last tribal council before merge. What happens for you here?
I got to choose relatively early. So we chose numbers out of a bucket, and then number 1 got to choose their thing first, and the last person got the last pick. I chose the endurance. I think on its surface, I was like, oh, endurance. I'm good at endurance. I can do this. The fact that I was going up against Tony and Todd was not great, but I was still like, got to pick the thing that you think you're the best at. Got to pick the thing that, you have the best chance at. So I picked endurance. Looking back on it, it was endurance, but it was also strength in a certain way, because you had to hold those blocks to each other. And thinking back on it, of course, obviously hindsight, I wish I would have picked something else, but just thinking about how tired I was, malnourished I was, not having the strongest body in general for that kind of thing. If it was stand on a balance beam for as long as you can, or hold your arm up or something, just something straight up endurance, I think I would have had a better chance. But
would you rather chosen dexterity then, or memory?
I probably would have chose memory, and that's also the thing that I would have ranked last for me. But thinking about it, nobody wanted to choose memory besides Carly, which she crushed. But I think at least two of those people got there because they had the last picks and they didn't get to choose. So with hindsight, I would have known that hey, you're probably going to get some people in here that maybe aren't even good at memory. They just got stuck there. And I could have held my own. So I think I will say I was choosing between the beanbag, dexterity, and endurance. So there's probably no way I would have chose memory. But thinking back on it, that probably would have been my best.
So you, in retrospect, you wish you'd been the last to choose, you've been forced to go memory.
Definitely. Although at that point, somebody else wouldn't have been forced to do memory. So who knows what the outcome would have been there. But yes, if my hand was tied, I probably wouldn't have overthought it as much either. So who knows?
Would you have ever tried to throw this challenge so that they get an alliance to vote here?
No.
Did it ever occur to you that other people would try to throw these challenges?
No. Straight up, no. Because I think my mentality is just win, get yourself to the next round. I don't think, and yeah, I wasn't thinking about people throwing it, because for me and for my tribe, we had just gone through this tribal council of for me, I guess it was detrimental to my game, and I had lost my idol, and I was like, there was no way I was going to put myself in any danger. So, and I didn't think the people that I was working with would want to do that either. So to me, it was just, get yourself to the next round.
You end up losing this challenge along with Carlos, and you head to loser camp, where you have a half hour or so the scramble, and you're also told there's a hidden immunity idol there. Now, you're there with some friends. Megan and Adam, both from your original Yellow tribe, are reunited. You're also there with Amber Reynolds and Taylor from your swap tribe, as well as Carlos, who this is probably your first time really meeting him.
Yep, it was. So, and Carlos and I we got taken to a separate spot to wait for the other challenges to finish. So I got to talk to him, but at that point it's of course you're going to be yeah, I want to work with you, and didn't get a chance to meet you yet, but you don't know this person. So I'm sure he has other alliances. But honestly, walking to the loser camp, I was thinking to myself, crap. But I was also thinking to myself, I think I can survive this. I've got some good people. Having Adam and Megan there was great. I was glad to see two faces that I knew I could trust. And then having Taylor, who just the night before had cried to me saying she was so sorry she voted for me, and that, she wants to make it up to me. I was maybe we could do something here. And so I'm walking to, and I'm talking to Taylor, and basically tried to cash that check right away. I was hey, you just put my name down last night. Let's work together and get through this, because we can work together moving forward. And she, of course, was singing that tune with me. And so we got there. The scramble occurred. I think Amber found the idol within 30 seconds. And I didn't even go the right way. I went the other way. And it's at a certain point, that they want someone to find the idol. Production does. So they're not gonna put it up in a tree that no one can reach, or bury it 6 feet underground. So someone probably found it, but you still want to look, because you still want to try to find it. But then conversations were happening, and at a certain point you just abandoned looking, because you're well, someone probably found it already. And no one stops looking. No one stops looking right when they find it, because they don't want to give off the impression that they found it. So it was an interesting scramble to find it. At a certain point, you do have to abandon trying to look, just so you can make sure that you're talking to people and not talking to people.
So what was your strategy for this round?
Just hold on. Try to find, somebody that would be willing to vote with you. Try to find somebody like Megan who had Carlos, and like try to latch onto that relationship, because I knew that I had Megan. I knew that I had Adam. I'm pretty sure I didn't have Amber or Reynolds. So, and I didn't know of the relationship, like the tight relationship between Amber, Reynolds, Carlos, and Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know that they threw it to get themselves the 4 there. So I didn't know that that was basically unbreakable.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, okay, get Megan, get Adam. I have a 3. Who is the easiest 4th to bring in? Who can we bring in? And Megan was, pretty close with Carlos. Adam was pretty close with Taylor. And so just trying to work either angle and say, like, let's just put a 4 together and do this. Like, I was hoping that everybody would be as afraid of not making it to the next round, or like feel as vulnerable as I did.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know that most of those people didn't feel vulnerable at all. But I was trying to play on like, okay, let's get a 4. Let's just do it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's done. And that's not how it happened, but that was my strategy.
Yeah, it seems like the goal is to be a 3-2-2 with 3 votes in Amber and Reynolds, 2 votes in the other, and then it doesn't matter who Amber and Reynolds vote for, because you have the revote to vote for whoever you want.
Yeah, and that was part of it too, because I did. It was like we kind of had a 5 or so, I thought, with me, Megan, and Adam, and then we had Taylor and Carlos, who weren't on opposite sides, but when we were talking about voting Amber or Reynolds, I think it was Carlos that was like, well, I can't vote Amber, and Taylor was like, well, I can't vote Reynolds. So we were like, okay, great. So like, you vote for the one you can't vote for, and you vote for the one you like, trying to appease their things that they said they couldn't do, and just trying to make it work. So we did have that 3-2-2. So I was kind of like in the middle of 2 dynamics almost, which you would think might be more settling, because you're like, okay, they have a person they don't want to vote for, but they're willing to work with me, so they're going to vote for the other person. But in hindsight, it was like just kind of a way probably for them to avoid committing to something, or like, and keep everyone apart. Yeah. So, I mean, like, looking back on this, go ahead.
Yeah, because had you, Megan, and Adam all voted together, you could at least force a tie, but given who we know who's in the swap, it probably still doesn't go super well.
Yeah, for sure. And I, just thinking about it back, like, I still didn't know that they had thrown it, but just with the group of people that were there, obviously the 4 of them, Taylor, Reynolds, Amber, and Carlos, were super tight. But like, Carlos was going to go to bat for Megan because they had gotten close, and he was like, absolutely no, like, not letting Megan go out. And Taylor had gotten really close to Adam, and she wanted to side with him. So unfortunately, I was really that odd person out. And looking back on it, I really don't think there was a way I could have stayed. I do think, like, I did talk to Taylor after the game, and other people too, but just particularly her. I don't think that they like wanted me to go. I don't think that they were like happy to vote me out, but well, maybe some of them were, I don't know. But I know that, like, because I was pretty unhappy with Taylor. Like, you did me dirty twice in a row, but knowing those relationships and knowing the pre-game relationships, that like, hey, that's a returnee season, right? Like, that's what happens. And those are bonds that didn't happen from a previous game. They didn't happen from one interaction. It was like, they're legit friends. And so, looking back on it, it's like they all had their people, whether in game or out of game, that they were going to be loyal to. And that just wasn't me. And so it kind of, I think all roads pointed to me getting voted out. And I think it was cherry on top that I would have been really well connected at the merge.
Yeah. I think I'm still surprised that Megan isn't targeted here, but like over you, I think.
Yeah. And I think about too, like, I've thought about this, and I alluded to it earlier, like whether or not I should have like just sold out. And because I basically didn't talk to Reynolds and Amber during this whole time, because I was like, not going to mess with you guys. Like, I don't think
Mhm.
you're going to work with me. So why would I try? I'm going after you. I know you're
Mhm.
going after me. But I thought about it, like, what if I went up to Amber and was just like, hey, came after each other. We know each other. And let's, like, I would do anything to stay. So I'll vote
Mhm.
Adam out. I'll vote Megan out. Like, tell me
Yeah.
what to do. But at that point, people were twisting anything that I said. Like, Adam was getting fed, things that I said that either I did flat out didn't say, or that I said but were twisted out of context. Like, because Adam came up to me and was like, people are saying you're going to vote for me. And like, I actually never said that. But I
Mhm.
was like, maybe I should have, because maybe I should have just been like anybody but me, Sandra Diaz Twine up in here. But I don't even think it would have worked, because I think, Amber and Reynolds, probably wanted me to go, and I was going to be too well connected according
Mhm.
to them. And so it probably would have, they just would have taken that information and gone to Adam and been like, listen to what Brent said. And at that
Mhm.
point, like, it would have been true and it wouldn't have changed the outcome. So
Well, so do you think there's anything you could have done? Anything like even for earlier in the game to change things at this point?
probably just getting closer to Amber and Reynolds on the
Mhm.
swap tribe, and using that relationship I had with Amber, making her feel more comfortable. Because I
Mhm.
think what she told me after the game was, sure, I came up to her and said like, hey, I like you, I care about you, I want to work with you. But like, she thought that she would have been seventh, eighth on my list. And so she didn't
Mhm.
want to be that, which, you know, like I said, probably not going to the end with Amber, but I probably could have made it more clear that I would have,
Mhm.
wanted to work with her, and kept that relationship going. Um, but at the same time, I had other people that I was working with. So, would she have been sixth or seventh or eighth? Like, maybe. So like, good on her. And I didn't fake it well enough, maybe. So that's probably the only thing I could have done, was to fortify that more. But it maybe would have helped, it maybe wouldn't have.
Mhm. So hypothetically, let's say Adam goes out here or Megan goes out here, or let's just say Adam goes out at this round instead of you. What is your laundry list of things you're aiming to do entering merge?
Reconnect with the people that I
Mhm.
had on my swap, or on my original tribe, that I wasn't with at the swap. So Megan, who I kind of got to reconnect with, but not really. Um, Skylar, and that's it, right? Yeah, that's it, because Corey was gone. Um, see who they had, kind of get to, obviously get
Mhm.
to know everybody that I didn't get to know in my swap,
Mhm.
that I wasn't on the swap tribe with. So people like Austin, people like Sharif. Um, there weren't that many people that I didn't actually get to play with. So
Mhm.
that were in the merge. They might have been the only two. Um,
Uh, yes. Austin and Sharif were the only two people you hadn't really met at this point.
yeah. So try to get to know them. And then I don't really know. Like, I was so intrigued to see what a merge game is like. So I mean, get close to the people that I'm close with, see what kind of relationships that they have, and try to form, like,
Mhm.
sort of an onion alliance, where I have a couple people that I'm super close with, some people that, I know I'm close with as well, and then kind of their people on the outside, so we could try to make a deep run. But um, I know that it was kind of a crazy merge, with information getting swapped back and forth between, the go between, which is Carlos, and
Mhm.
that would have been fun to see. And I don't know, like, if I'd survived that, does that mean that I have a little better relationship with Carlos, and maybe like I'm in with him, and he's in with Megan. So I don't know. Would have been interesting. I
Mhm.
I might have been targeted right away, but I also would have tried like hell to win immunity. So that would have been fun too.
Would you have gone for Josh like most people did in the merge?
Um, I don't I don't think I would have been my first priority, and not just because I know you're watching. Hey Josh. But I really think that, like, at that point, Josh had escaped our swap without me, like, really being upset with him. Like,
Mhm.
he voted with me, like you said. Like, I may have questions about his motive, but at the end of the day, like, he didn't vote for me to go home. And I still would have thought, like, hey, this is a person that I can work with. This is a person that I liked getting to know. This is a person I would want to work with moving forward. And so I mean, if it came to that, I would have just gone with the majority, but I was still thinking at that point that I think Josh would have been a good person to work with.
Did anything surprise you about how the merge progressed?
It's hard to keep up with everything when you're out there because like you're there, but you're not watching all the
You're only seeing
everything that's
the
going on. You're
results.
like,
That's it.
you're seeing the results and you're seeing like you're hearing from the handlers, but I don't know, it's just a different way to take in the game and there's so much going on anyways. So I think at first I was surprised at how far like the Amber, Reynolds, and Carlos crew got. And then when I kind of realized what was happening with Carlos and then kind of like some of the other people like were getting picked off, it was kind of fun to watch, honestly, see how far they could go. But no, I don't know that anything was overly surprising or I think at that point I was just kind of ready to watch and see who was going to come out of it. So it was fun watching. We weren't really actually able to go to the tribals at first because they didn't want our facial expressions to communicate anything to the remaining players. And then Frank made this like, has anyone talked about this? How he made like a spy shack basically?
No, I don't think so.
So he took this like wood frame. I think it was like it had like a hinge on it. So he took this wood frame that had chicken wire. I don't know if he actually put the chicken wire on it or not, but he put sticks, like wove them in between the chicken wire. And we stood it up next to the barn that was next to tribal council, and me and him and Lydia and Corey just like sat behind it. Like we just stood or sat behind it and poked through the chicken wire to watch tribal council. And eventually like Parker said it was okay that we could come and watch behind that. So yeah, it had to be behind a chicken wire. It was kind of like when Sandra and Tony and Rob were on the season as the idols and got to go up in that little booth and watch. So it was super fun. And yeah, I had a good experience post game. Like I was pretty bummed. I was like super, if anyone watched my exit interview, I was not having a good time. And it took me a while to like get out of that. Like I mean, people that have played, if you didn't win, basically you probably had some sort of that experience, especially getting so close to the merge. I was like, damn, I was super close. Like, just like literally cried in Parker's arms at one point. Just like so sad. But you know, you get through it. You know, Frank and Lydia were super, super nice. I mean, everybody was, but they were two that I was able to be like, this sucks. Like I had a hard time with this, and they were both able to sort of help me out, and we helped each other out through it and stuff like that. So it was tough to get through, but then once I was through it, I just tried to enjoy watching the game and seeing my new friends play through and see who was going to win. So yeah, it was a good time.
Any takeaways from the season or anything you learned?
Returning seasons are hard and they're different. Like I know if I ever played another game at a certain point, I would probably know somebody or at least know of somebody. But it's much different when you know basically everybody or know of everybody and everyone has that shared experience. So yeah, I think I learned a lot about returning seasons and how you have to prepare differently for them, how some things you can't prepare for. Just like in a non-returning player season, there are certain things you can't prepare for, but I almost think it's harder because there's so many things that you know, like there might be relationships, but they're also unknowns because you don't know where they stand all the time and you don't know how they shift and you don't know who's got a friendship with who from back home or whatever. So yeah, I learned that's hard and I had so much fun. Like I just took away from it that it was fun. It was a bummer. It was a big bummer not to make the merge and not to get to that part of the game. But when you look at it for what we're doing out there, like playing a game and probably all taking a week off of our normal lives just to go do that, like, and just, I should have said this earlier, watching 2 hours in, besides Josh, hey Josh, production and people that worked so hard on the season. Like I had such a good time getting to know the production people because there were a lot of people that had played on recent seasons that I knew of, but didn't get a chance to actually know. It was just so much fun. So I tried to take the good parts of it. I tried to take the learning experiences from it and just have a good time with everything that was given to me. And, you know, I think I would play another game at a certain point and I would play Reelfoot again, of course. Like if they asked me back, I would play in a heartbeat. which would probably be a bad decision at playing a third time because not all people would be third time players. So I'd probably be targeted, but whatever, it'd be fun. But I'd probably play another game too. Like I think I would. Yeah, I know there's a lot of games out there and probably some that I don't even know about. So I'll be looking to see what's out there.
Oh, Brent, do you mind if I pitch you some rapid fire questions as we wrap up here?
I would be mad if you didn't.
Excellent. Who from your first season still has unfinished business?
I think rapid fire answer is Rob. Rob, who is on my swap tribe, Rob Papas, who is on my swap tribe, good friend that I've stayed in touch with since the game, but also just I think that he's a good player. He got to the merge, and I just want to see if he could go further than that. Other answer, because I know some of these questions that you're going to ask. I think I think Anessa has unfinished business. I don't know if she would say that, but she made it. She played an amazing game. She made it the farthest you can make it without making it to the end. And she got sniped. And so I'd like to see her try to make it to the end again.
Who from this current season still has unfinished business?
If I'm not going to say myself, even though I think that I do, I think I would say Frank. I would say Frank because he's made it about as far, I think, in both of his games. And I think he's a great player. I think he has a good mind for the game. I think he has his fun personality. But then for my other answer, I would say Megan, because I was thinking about this too. Megan made it to the very cusp of being in the finals, and then she made it to the finals. And if that's not unfinished business to go back and win, I don't know what is. So I think there's two types of unfinished business there.
What was your favorite challenge this season?
Oh, this is one I didn't think about. Honestly, the swimming was fun because I just got to go out there and do something that I'm, probably better at than the average person, just because most people don't actually swim. So that was really fun. Besides that, yeah, I would say that one. And also that one was a cool one because it was so multifaceted and everyone had their part to play. And once we finished the swim, I got to run up and didn't even know how we were doing, and then got to watch the puzzle, and it was very close at the end. So that one was fun all around because there was quite the chance that I would go home. The other one I would say is the box challenge, but it wasn't as consequential, but I had a lot of fun, and especially winning that one with Megan, we had a good time.
Did you watch the merge challenges?
Yes, I did. So most of them were done from I could sit on the porch and watch it. So yes, I did.
Which merge challenge do you think you would have done the best in?
Oh, done the best in. I was thinking about which one I would have wanted to do.
That's also valid too.
Yeah. I would have wanted to do the one that was towards the end where it was you had to run and go under the thing and memorize the thing.
Bar challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been fun. I think I would have been pretty good, or the thing that I would have been the best at maybe was holding the paddle out and stacking those things up. I think it's different than this kind of strength.
You're talking about the
it's a little bit more
going up.
No, well, the one that you're holding the paddle and then you stack the clay pigeons on.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that one. I don't think I would have been as great at the one that was more balancy, but that one is kind of strength combined with balance. Maybe I wouldn't have been good at it, but it was one I wanted to play. The one that was hard to watch and probably hard to do was the slingshot one. I tried to do that one after they did that one, but I didn't envy everyone trying to do that.
What was your favorite camp life moment?
It's a tie between something that I know that Carly talked about, which was Corey climbing out of his trash bag, sleeping bag in the morning, which was just hilarious. It's definitely a you had to be there moment, but it was funny. And then that night where we were just all so cold and sitting by the fire and laughing about Lydia's frog hoodie and just being delirious together.
Who do you wish you had a chance to work with this season but didn't?
I would say Sharif. I mean, there was only Sharif and Austin, so I would love to work with both of them. I guess I didn't work with everybody, but play with, I think, and work with would have been Sharif, just because we talked before the game in terms of just like the meet and greet before the game. Seemed like a super cool dude. He seemed like somebody that I probably would have been able to get along with, and just seemed like someone that'd be fun to work with.
He's the winner for the person I think everyone this season wanted to work with.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's such a good dude. He actually, so the morning after we were done, Megan drove me and Sharif and Adam to the airport, and I was just chatting with him. I was like, he's really cool, and that was a fun foursome. So I think we would have had a good time all working together in the game.
Who surprised you the most out there?
I feel like I'm gonna go with the chalk answer as well of Carly. Like I didn't expect Carly to be as strong or make it as far as she did, and she beasted it out there. I think she did a great job, and partially because I worked with her and she was, my person at the swap, and I wanted her to go far, but I was super happy to see her go as far as she did, and just the fact that she was the poster child of not second chances, of unfinished business, with going from fourth out to fourth place, it just writes itself. So yeah, she surprised me a lot. Once I got to know her, it didn't surprise me, but just like from my very first impression to where she finished at the end, like total boss moment.
What was your lowest moment in the game?
All of that night that I got votes and almost got voted out. But it probably was just like that point where I got votes and coming back to camp and being like, is my game over? Like, it sucked to get voted out, but also just like the going from such a high of never having lost to like, okay, you were voted out, except you had an idol that saved you. That was probably the quickest like whiplash turnaround and lowest moment for sure.
What was your highest moment?
Playing the idol, which was like the same moment, but you can't not play an idol and save yourself and have that not be the best moment. Like it was a moment that I didn't get the chance to like soak in the moment, because your mind is so like, play it, to play it right. Am I going to, blah, blah, blah. But just going through that, looking back on it from a bird's eye view, like I got to go to a tribal where I was nervous about getting voted out, play an idol and have it save me. Like, that's cool. It's a fun moment. So yeah, I would say, like, I don't know about highest, like the highest was probably winning a challenge and feeling like we're on top of the world, but like the highest survivor moment was definitely playing an idol.
Well, is there anything or anyone you want to shout out as we wrap up here?
Just thanks to production again. I mean, like being closer to the action this time at post merge and just seeing like how the game was run. I know that Parker basically saved this season from not happening, and I really, really appreciate him and everybody that I got to meet that worked hard on the season. Steven, you doing these interviews, I appreciate all the content you make for the community and just giving us a chance to talk. Like, you've done a lot of these for a lot of seasons, so thank you very much. And no, I just had a great time, and it was fun to talk through it. So yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Brent, thank you so much for being free and available and flexible. I'm super glad that I have a chance to talk to you just after hearing so many people talk about you in your game. Like, I need to get the story itself. And so just thank you so much. And, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Josh, for tuning in and providing some great comments and support. We're nearing the end of the Reelfoot post-game interview season. Tomorrow night, I'll be talking to Clark about his experience. And so I know he probably has had talk about unfinished business. I think Clark is one of the poster childs of the season. So I'm really excited to hear his story, and hopefully it'll be a cathartic experience. I think he's had probably one of the roughest goes. Generally,
I think he has too. Yeah.
Players who play, there's a correlation between people's placement and in these games and their desire to talk about their games. So I'm very excited Clark is wanting to share his story. But Brent,
yeah, I am too. Look forward to that one. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, Brent, again, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great rest of your evening.